All right, we'll get this meeting started. First of all, I'd like to excuse Councilman Troy Belliston. He is traveling for work and unable to make it to the public forum or the work session. So we'll start this public forum. Today is Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. And on the first meeting of the quarter, before we do our work session, we start with a public forum. And this is an opportunity for the public to come before the council and give feedback from the community. And we found it to be very beneficial. As has been customary as a council, we are here to listen. And we've found that most well-spoken comments can be concise, clear, and non-contentious. And also they can be done in about 3 to 4 minutes. So if you go too long, I push a little button and there's a trap door. I'm just kidding, there's no trap door, but most well-spoken comments can be concise. And even if we're not engaging back and forth with you during this public forum, it doesn't mean that we are not listening. And after you've made your comments, if it's appropriate to connect you with staff, we will do so. So at this time, I see that 2 individuals have signed up to be on the public forum. So I'm just going to go in order. The first one I see is Steve Otteson, and that's in regards to Sandia Road. Mr. Otteson, you come forward.
Up here, huh?
Yeah, and I know right where you live, Steve. You got a beautiful home, and I know right on Sandia where you are. So
I do, but it's kind of falling to pieces right now because I live on the corner of Canella Circle and Sandia Road, and there's a dip there. Well, there's a culvert there, so the rainwater can get from the other side of the street to my side of the street, and then on down there where Randy Snow lives, and I guess it goes somewhere from there, I don't know. But anyway, they redone the road here a few months ago, and ever since they've redone the road, they dug it up and put new asphalt in, and they did a lot of work out there.
yeah,
But every time a big truck drives over that little grate right there, my whole house shakes, and it's horrible. I've got cracks in the ceiling, I've got cracks in my garage, and I'm not a structural engineer, so I don't know what it's doing to my place structurally, but I talked to the engineer, Andy, and he says it's an easy fix. I don't know what that means, but I want to know how to get it fixed and what do I have to do to get it done?
yeah. I know right where you're talking. It seems like on one side it's asphalt, and on the other side it's grates. Does that sound right, or is it grates across the whole?
It's a grate across it, but there is asphalt on part of the grate.
Okay.
And that asphalt, I guess, is not high enough, and it creates a dip. And I think what the engineer was referring to is they could put more asphalt on that and eliminate the dip, and that would fix the road. Before they did the road, it was fine. It's been fine for years, but ever since they did the road, it's horrible.
Yeah. And the idea certainly with the full rebuild was for it to be better, because there were some sections of that road that were, but obviously for you
well, you know, there's a lot of traffic on that road. Now, when cars go over there, nothing happens.
It's just the bigger trucks.
Yeah, because they're too light. But when we get them big heavy trucks, you know, these earth movers and the big dump trucks, the 18-wheel kind, and
Yeah.
it's just, and it don't matter whether they're empty or full. They just go over that and it crashes, and boy, my whole house shakes. It's horrible situation.
Well, we appreciate you bringing this to our attention. I know that Andy's been out there before. I think what I'd like to do, Steve, if you're okay, is Blake Fonsbeck is here. He's the Public Works Director, so he's Andy's boss.
Okay.
And he understands roads and drainage and all of those aspects of public works. And he's got a good heart. He cares about the community like you do and like we do. If I could just ask you to connect with Blake before you leave the meetings today.
You bet I will.
And I'll let Blake kind of work directly with you and then the appropriate people from his staff to work towards a solution.
I appreciate your help. Thank you.
Fair enough. It's good to see you guys again.
Good to see you too.
Thank you. All right. The next person that we have who's signed up to make some comments is Jim Eccles, and he wants to talk about traffic on 300 East. This ought to be a good one. Come on up, Jim.
Oh, it's a good one, all right. Like Jeremy Red has been out there. I was formerly president of the Association of Cherokee Springs. At the time I was president, I called Jeremy out there to take a look at the problem we're having. The problem we're having, I don't know if anybody's been out to 300 East to take a look at the problem lately. No one, and I mean no one, follows the 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. They're all going 40, 50, 55 miles an hour up that street.
You're talking northbound on 300
That's
towards
right.
Telegraph.
And what's even worse is a lot of your diesels going down 300 East, they're using their air brakes going down. And you know what kind of noise that makes? Going downhill. Terrible. Another problem we have there, and I don't know if Jeremy remembers, it's been a couple of years. We've got a couple of consecutive bumps there. But when those 18-wheelers hit it, and we have a lot of dual trailer 18-wheelers hit it, it literally shakes my house to pieces. I'm having the same problem as this gentleman just left the door, left here is having. My wife, she can't take it anymore. I mean, it's literally shaking my house apart. I don't know why it's causing that much trembling in my house. There's something different in that area. I don't know why, but it literally just shakes my house apart. I've got a hold of Andy. Andy is aware of the problem. I talked to him about it. He said at one time, he said, well, we're going to be doing some repaving, not repaving, but we're going to be doing some covering of the road. And he said that'll help it, but we both knew that wasn't going to do anything. That 3/16 resurfacing the road was not going to do anything to that road. The traffic, I've had Jason Williams, I've called him several times. He's put the radar signs up there on 3 different occasions. Mm-hmm. It doesn't help. I've asked him to put somebody out there. Only thing that's really going to help, I asked him to put some permanent radar signs out there. He says, well, it's not in the budget. I asked him to put some more help out there, and he says, we don't have the manpower. Well, my way of thinking is this. You can make enough money manpower-wise to pay for manpower. Enough money you can make out just getting tickets off of 300 East and Telegraph. So, that kind of reasoning doesn't really make sense to me, because I know you can make up the difference in money just from the tickets that you can make up, for the manpower. but we need to do something. Street department, they did move the sign where the sign where the speed limit posted it's really a small sign. It was posted too close to the entrance of Cherokee Springs where you come to the park. I complained it was too close to the entrance. It was so close that by the time somebody, if they saw it, it's too late for them to slow down to make any good to slow the traffic before it goes past Cherokee Springs. So they did move it down about 30 feet, but it still needs to go down further. I would suggest that we put a radar type sign to where people can see it. They can see it further enough down or it'll slow down. But I know it's not going to stop it.
Well, I appreciate your comments, Jim. There's no doubt that every time I talk to Chief, or most times I talk to him, he is constantly telling people to slow down and to take the time, plan ahead and take the time they need to get to where they're going. And I know that he and his officers, our officers, get spread pretty thin responding to different areas, sometimes in schools, zones, and different areas where they're really trying to keep people safe. But I appreciate you bringing this up and speaking with Andy and with Chief Williams. That's the right approach to take on this. The council has heard those concerns about that section of 300 East as you're heading north and approaching Telegraph. The Cherokee Springs neighborhood is a great neighborhood. It's a great community, important part of Washington. Blake might not want to come to city council meetings anymore, but I'm going to invite you to do the same thing that I did with Steve there, and that is to connect with our Public Works Director, Blake Fonsbeck, and to continue to discuss that and monitor what might be the best solution for the community there.
Well, I'd like someone to champion me on this because I don't want this to go by the wayside because something needs to be done. I've been working in office for 3 years. I've talked to Jerry about it. He says, well, I get with somebody, nothing's been done.
Yeah.
I've been to, this is my last course here and something needs to be done.
No, I appreciate that. I can tell you that this council prioritizes very much so, well-maintained streets, that it is a high priority for us. Our public works guys, our streets department are working day and night to try to keep those done well. I promise we care. Within our PD and our streets department, we're doing the best we can. And Blake would be the very best point of contact. Okay. So I'm going to ask you, Jim, appreciate you taking some time here. Blake, could you just raise your hand? If you could, you two could connect, and any information that you have, the appropriate avenue is to go back through him. That's his department, and he runs it well.
Do you want this?
I'd have you bring that through Blake.
All right.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay, we do have a few more minutes on the public forum. If anyone else has something that would like to come forward and speak to the council on. John Olson.
Mayor, council.
Every time you get here, I feel like we need a taller mic for.
Mayor,
now
council.
you know how I see the world.
Now I feel like a peasant.
Stand up, John.
Just appreciate the fact that you do this every quarter. Was reading the St. George News last week and just looking for some clarification and maybe the people listening. They were talking about the county fair. St. George News listed the parade in St. George this year and
Yes.
not in Washington.
That's correct.
So
I can give you a little bit of feedback on that if you want.
I'm just trying to make a clarification so people listening and here can
If
hear
you
it.
don't mind, let me just kind of give a little bit of the background on that. So historically, the Washington County Fair Parade would rotate sometimes it would rotate around the community, sometimes it was held in St. George. When most everything was shut down during COVID, Washington was willing to stay open and give the public the opportunity to come to the fair parade. And so we did have that parade for several years in a row, which was a little bit tough because at one point, the county changed the dates for the county fair to be right next to our Cotton Days, as you know well. But what's happened, and the reason that the decision was intentionally made not to hold it in Washington anymore, it was an intentional decision. And the reason is when the Main Street interchange opened and dropped more traffic, that traditional parade route, we just felt like we had to limit the number of closures and parades. So we cut those back to Cotton Days, Veterans Day, and which one more, I can't remember which one I'm missing, but we now only hold 3 parades on that. It also takes some of the pressure off our PD for closing that door, those roads with traffic. So it wasn't an easy conversation, but we had it for a period, and now it's back at our neighbors, so.
Thank you. The other thing I just want to mention, and this is a subject that's near and dear to me, USS Utah. The captain of the nuclear submarine will be out at the county fair next week. So if people want to go out and meet the captain, and I know Washington has something planned with him out at the George Washington Plaza, but again, thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for all you do for the city.
We appreciate you, John. Thank you. Unless there's any additional comments in the public forum, I'll go ahead and close the public forum. Thank you, everyone. Council, at this time, I'll turn back to you as we transition into our workshop meeting, and I will call for a motion to approve the agenda as outlined.
So moved, Mayor.
Have a motion by Councilman Coates,
Second.
second by Councilman Henderson. All in favor? The workshop agenda is approved. First item of business is the SGRH Adolescent Day Treatment. And I'd like to welcome our friends Logan Gothrow and Becca Pace from St. George Regional Health to present to the council. And about 15 or 20 minutes would be great.
Oh, it'll be less than that.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you guys for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So we are opening a new day treatment program for adolescents. There's not many mental health programs in St. George or in the southwest Utah area for adolescents, specifically for mental health.
We call it the Washington City area, the greater Washington City area.
There
It's
you
a
go.
little bit new, but
Yeah, new from Colorado, but we just kind of wanted to give some.
Pass that along, it'll catch on.
Yeah, we'll keep that going. Just give some background information. Because we are a new type of program in the area, we kind of are trying to get the word out about kind of what we offer and what population we serve. And so we appreciate the opportunity to kind of pass that on here. So we are a day treatment partial hospitalization program specifically. So just a little bit on what partial hospitalization is. So we're offering the same level of services as if an adolescent was going to stay in a hospital, like an inpatient stay, we call it.
Can you just, I'm going to try not to interrupt you, but can you give us an idea of, this isn't like an emergency room visit.
No.
What prompts this initial in processing?
Okay, so generally for an inpatient stay, an adolescent would be brought to an emergency room or have a crisis, or they call a crisis team. We do have a stabilization and mobile response team in the St. George, Washington area that will respond to these kind of crises. And then they'll have a crisis evaluation, and there's a determination that this adolescent or adult is unsafe to return home.
But like a mental health crisis,
Yes,
that's what we're talking,
mental
okay.
health, yeah.
yes.
Unsafe to return home, so they admit them into a unit, a lockdown unit. We do have an adult unit in St. George Regional Hospital, but the only adolescent or youth programs are all up north in Salt Lake.
Our closest is Lehigh. So,
Okay.
Yep.
So basically, we're the same level of service, except we need to ensure that adolescents will be safe going home in the evenings and on the weekends. We offer a bunch of group therapy throughout the day. So basically, they'll come to us and they stay much like a school day, 8:45 to 2:30, Monday through Thursday, they'll be with us. And then on Fridays, it's 8:45 to 1. And they'll be going through group therapy. We have 2 therapists that run all of the groups. And then Becca's our behavioral health specialist. She'll be facilitating all the groups as well. And then they'll do an individual session with the therapist every week and a family session. So we work as a family-centric approach. But basically, we're trying to prevent our adolescents from having to be sent out of our community and up to Salt Lake, Lehigh area for the treatment.
You know, so it's interesting, my father's a retired family practice physician, and he has said with his grandkids, he's retired, but he helps with, but he is a big proponent of saying that people heal and get better at home. And so I think, I really like this because it's near home and
Right.
it allows for a more comfortable situation to recover.
Well, and when you're in crisis with a teen, your whole family is in crisis, right? Like, it's not just the individual. So if the only option they have is to be shipped out of their community, that disrupts the family flow also. They have to be up there in the vicinity for however long that adolescent is going to be hospitalized for and however long it's deemed appropriate. Our program is nice because it helps to avoid that possible hospitalization, but also on the flip side, if it is determined that an adolescent needs to be hospitalized, we're definitely not, there are instances where they need some stability first. And in that case, we are who they would refer to right after. So they can come home and still get treatment here. They're not just discharged and go find an outpatient therapist, right? It's that hole that's being filled from the in-between, right?
Yeah.
And with that said as well, is being inpatient, you're very isolated. Like, you're in a stable, sterile environment where maybe all of your problems, your anxieties that put you there
Yeah.
are no longer present, right? And so we're more of a bridge where they might go home and they might deal with some of those anxieties or those problems they're dealing with, but then they're going to come back to us the next day and we can process through them. We can address if any of the skills or the curriculum that we taught them during our programming that day helped. If they didn't help, we let them fail and come back and rework through it. And just humans in general, that's how we learn. You have to apply it. And if you're in inpatient sterile kind of atmosphere, you can't apply it necessarily in the way that you would.
And so in this partial hospitalization, you're giving them tools to put into practice.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Tools and confidence building, and we take what they're struggling with, and our census is very low, so we have a really high staff to adolescent ratio. So with that, we can individualize care so much for them, because a lot of them are going through the same things, but there are differences too, right, with different people. But also the family-centric is really important. They're able to go home to their families and apply what they're learning during the day, talk to their families about it, but also we're providing that family care too, because they have to have support both in the community and at home.
Yeah, so our therapists have been working for months to create a curriculum. And our curriculum is heavily evidence-based, but also includes multiple modalities of treatment. DBT therapy is the most common, dialectic behavior therapy. That's the most common in most treatments, residential facilities. So we included that, but we included some CBT and some other modalities as well to kind of make it more holistic in care. I'm gonna move on a few slides because we have a slide that's specifically about that. So our main focus is the 5 dimensions of wellness. It's generally 8 dimensions, but we narrowed it to 5 for adolescents. We took out some of the financial burdens and different pillars there, but we based our whole curriculum off of these 5 dimensions of wellness. We made it rotating. So we made 15 days because that is the longest length of the stay we have them. And each day has its own lessons in it. but none of them necessarily build on each other, but they're all related so that we can start an adolescent at any time throughout the 15 days and they can still get each pillar of wellness in their stay and they can still benefit from each lesson. So we've been focusing on creating this for months now, and yeah, and it's very fluid because we are new. We're a different type of partial hospitalization than they even have up north. And so we're just, as we have adolescents come through, we're always altering it and just individualizing to help them as much as we can. We also have a psychiatrist on board, so we offer therapist-led skill groups. Go back one more, as well as the individual sessions like I talked about and the family sessions. We also, I am the nurse on staff, so we always have a nurse in the facility, and we have two psychiatrists that also work at St. George Regional that are rotating schedule. They're always on call, and they meet with every child at admission and discharge, and they manage their medications throughout the entire program.
If that's applicable, yeah.
And then we are very set on warm handoffs. We don't want a child in a family who's already in distress to have to worry about scheduling for the next resource, figuring out who they need to contact. So we have created as many contacts as we can in our community and with resources in like outlying communities such as Kanab and Cedar City to help with the process of when they're done with our 5 to 15 days, which is very short. We realize that, but we are handing off to the next resource and we are helping them bridge that gap and not fall through the cracks as we're having them move on and move forward.
Yep. For most families, it's a whole new world when something like this happens, and so they're already stressed out. So if we can take some of that burden off of them, that was one of our big goals, was just to be able to have that. We're not gonna just drop you. We're not just gonna say, oh, you graduated, you're done, right? At the end of treatment, we meet as a treatment team and we decide, has this intensive therapy worked for this adolescent? Or do they need still a higher level of treatment? Or are they better to go to a lower level of treatment? And then based on that, we can recommend whatever to them.
How long have you been open?
We got our license the end of February. Yeah, so just about 6 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're figuring it out, and is word getting
amazing.
out? I mean,
Yeah.
part of this is public outreach to let the
Yes.
community know.
And that's the thing, I think that's our biggest thing with coming here and to letting you guys know that this is even out there, because we had a lot of press right at the beginning and then it kind of dropped off, and it's because we've never offered something like this in our community. We think people just aren't used to relying on something like that, right? Everybody goes up north for all of the children's stuff, right? And so we just want everyone to know, like, they don't have to.
Can you give us an example of just like a typical situation where a family or an individual might find themselves needing this service? Just give us like nothing that would break privacy, but just like a typical scenario.
Yeah, so let's say a family has an adolescent, they're in crisis at home. They are either suicidal, they're having problem with anxiety and panic attacks, they're having problems with some aggression, basically dealing with being able to cope with what they're feeling. Like their emotions or whatever they're dealing with, the problems they're dealing with are too big for them to deal with, and it's coming out in different ways. So that family takes them into the ER because they're not sure where to take them, right? There's a great crisis team in the ER that will assess them, and then in that case, they will send us a referral. They'll kind of like, okay, this child needs more than going home and doing outpatient therapy where they see a therapist once a week or once every other week. They're like, they need more than that. And so they reach out to us. Another example would be a parent. They see our information in the St. George News, or they have a flyer that they have or a brochure, and they like, my child, I can't deal with what my child is going through right now. I think they need help. I'm worried about them. They can call us. We do free intake assessments. We don't even get any information for payment, insurance, until we decide that our service is going to be beneficial for them. So we'll bring them in. We do a whole psychosocial assessment. Our therapist sits down with the child, the adolescent, goes through their whole psychosocial. I sit down with them as the nurse, do a whole nursing assessment, make sure that medically they're doing okay. And then we sit down as a team and we decide if our resources what they need, if they need a higher level resource, if they need a lower level. And then we are in contact with the families and we work directly with them to get to the resource that they need, to get to the contact they need, or to start with us. And then the great part about us being through St. George Regional is we accept a lot of insurances when we can work with financial aid. Our foundation is working on creating scholarships for families that can't afford to use our program so that we can benefit those families.
Council, questions, comments?
Well, I think this is a great thing to have it local, you know, so the kids can stay local and now I just had a question. Is the BMed, is that just for adults?
It is.
Okay, so up until now, all the
All the
adolescents and
get
kids
shipped
had to
north.
go up north, huh?
And if there isn't a bed, they're admitted to our peds unit, which isn't always ideal
Yeah.
right
So,
now,
yeah.
until there is a bed available. Because this season especially, we've had a lot of kids that they don't have beds available in Lehigh even.
So this is a
They
great
just have
thing.
to wait it out here
Yeah.
in a non-psychological unit until there's bed.
Yeah, so this is a big deal. It's
This is a big deal.
really a good step forward for
is,
our area, huh? Thank you.
What do you see as the main motives for, let's say, parents in bringing adolescents in? Is it behavioral based, or is it seeking a diagnosis for behavior that they don't recognize or understand?
I think generally behavioral based. I think in general, as a parent, you care about your kid, right? You want to keep them safe, and that safety seems to be the main motive that generally brings a family in, or disruptive behavior in school or towards siblings, and they're just not sure where to turn. And so they turn here. We have the emergency room, but we don't have any kind of inpatient hospitalization. So they turn to the emergency room, and then it breaks the family apart because they need to send them up north if they're unstable and they can't keep them in the community.
What does the school district offer in regards to this type of help?
Yeah.
So we have, each school has a counselor, and they have a lot of students, each of them, but we have worked directly with them. So for our program, we don't have them complete schoolwork during programming, but we work directly with their counselor of their school and the school district to help them return into school and not have to have extra anxiety about what they're missing. So have the parents kind of sign what we call an ROI, release of information, so that we can talk to them about their adolescent, and then we create a plan with the counselor of like having the counselor reach out to the family, meet with them, figure out what coming back into school looks like, what work they need to make up, what work that the teachers and the school is okay with, just like relieving them for that time frame, and so we can kind of prevent that anxiety.
Generally, when a teen is in crisis and they go to a counselor at school, the counselor has certain steps they have to take, right, with that child, with that adolescent. And one of the steps after their contact, one of the options now that we're here is that the counselor can say, hey, there is this other option to keep you in the community. You know, we're kind of recommending this, call them, have them do an intake, see if it's right for them. And so we've worked with the school district, thankfully, on that, and they've been really great.
Tell the public again where you're located.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah, so we're located on 400 East, 500 South, kind of catty corner from where the old hospital was.
Okay.
So we renovated the old Jubilee home to create this program.
So it's a home-like environment too, which we've had a lot of people be like, wow, this is really cool, because when you're inpatient, it is very sterile and it is very hospital-like. And so it's way more comfortable for the kids. It's like a big house. So it's good that way.
So before we let you go, we just share just briefly what it means to you to be a part of this
Oh my
this
gosh.
program.
You're
Beck,
making me emotional.
I know you're a Washington City girl, and
I am, and I have teenagers, and I have nieces and nephews who all reside in this community, and to me, I just feel like this is such a sigh of relief for parents to have just this support behind them in case they don't know what to do, right? They have somewhere they can call, somewhere that they could possibly have their child attend, where they know they're safe, they know they're getting the therapy that they need, and learning skills that are super applicable. And so when they asked me to join this, I was like, it fulfills such a huge gap, it's a bridge for a huge gap that's in this adolescent psychiatric treatment, and so I'm super excited about it.
And for me, I became a nurse to help people. I've worked in residential treatment facilities with adolescents, and I find that it's very rewarding when you can help an adolescent, and it's very needed. Our society is pretty crazy for adolescents. Social media, COVID happening, getting stuck at home, there's a lot of mental health crises. And the more we can connect to them and the more that we can give them a safe place to learn skills, and then also the ability to go home and use those skills, you know, the better their outcome is, the better their lives are gonna be, and keeping them in the community is just a cherry on top there, that we can offer this in our community and be the first ones to offer it and kind of bridge that gap and not send them up north.
Well, thank you for reaching out. Thank you for sharing this information. This council, they will make sure to pass that information along. The public has been able to hear this, and thanks for making a difference.
Thank you so
course,
much
yeah.
for having
Thank you
us.
guys
We
for
really
having us.
appreciate it.
Next up is update on the Solente Plan Community Development. Ryan Coates. So council, while he's getting set up here, you know, and for the public, obviously Solente already has all of their entitlements, but Ryan and I were speaking, and this is such a significant new addition to our community that I asked Ryan if he would do us a favor by coming and just giving the council, staff, and the community update on this amazing community. So Ryan, take it away.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the invite. It's good to be with all of you today. I'll be fairly brief, but do just want to, like Mayor said, provide some general updates with what's happening at the Solente project. And I'll start just high level, just as more of a reminder as to, you know, what Solente is at full build out. So if you can go to the first slide there. Ultimately, it is, I have it perfect. It's 570 acres, master plan community that's got 2,200 total units at build out. A varying product mix. Our first neighborhood is mostly estate homes, but we're working towards bringing additional product. But you see townhomes, condos, stacked flats. There'll be some commercial and some hospitality components that'll be built out in future phases. And as I mentioned, the club focus in our estate neighborhood is the first neighborhood we've started. That's kind of where you see the first couple buildings that have come out of the ground. And so we're excited and at the reception that we've had out there. And obviously it is adjacent to the Red Cliffs Preserve, which is an amazing amenity. I did just want to share some key milestones that have taken place since we broke ground back in 2024 on the project. And, you know, first things first, obviously the parade in the real estate world is a big deal. And so we were excited to have a parade home out there in February. Very well received. We had a builder out there that was aggressive and got their house out of the ground. Beautiful home. They had about 20,000 folks come through it. So great visibility for Washington City, the Solente project and the neighborhood up there. And so we're excited to see that completed in February. Along with that, we opened our sales center. So we finished a small sales facility that's on site. So people can come out and get information about Solente. It's a great area for people to come out and ask questions as well. And so we have quite a bit of traffic that comes out to that sales center and gets to interface with people there. We have a club component to this estate this estate neighborhood. And so we are in design on this club amenity for the neighborhood. We are anxiously working through the planning of that, looking to break ground this year on the club component there in this first neighborhood, with an estimated completion there in 2026.
Well, can you explain further what you mean by a club component?
For sure. So in this neighborhood, because it is a gated neighborhood, it's a private club, right? So there will be restaurant space, there'll be pools, there'll be a fitness center, pickleball courts that are exclusive. It's their amenity, right? Okay. But it is behind the gate, and so it's a private club that those members within that neighborhood will have access to. So thank you.
And then before you finish, I want to make sure you talk about those amenities into the Red Cliffs Desert Reserve that
Absolutely.
are fully open.
Absolutely. You know, and that's actually a call out we'll have as we get into this. But obviously the Grapevine Trailhead was something that we worked with the city to ensure that was memorialized. There's additional trailheads that we'll continue to add as we build out the neighborhood, as well as providing that access throughout, right, is to ensure that there's access for folks to continue to recreate in an amazing amenity space there. And they're called out in kind of the master plan that shows some of the designated areas there for people to continue to use those trails. and enjoy all that Southern Utah has to offer. A couple other call outs from a milestone perspective is we did actually agree with Quantum to be the first 3 gig neighborhood, not just in the area for Quantum, that's nationwide, which I think is a big feather in the cap. 3 gig internet is provided with every home as part of their assessment. And that's $55 for 3 gig internet, which is pretty phenomenal. So we're excited to offer that to our residents there in the neighborhood. And then second, another big component of Celente is just the overall planning and design. And so our group, we worked hard on ensuring that the design was complementary to what the land has to offer. And so we received Localscape's endorsement through the Water Conservancy District. That's the second community in the state of Utah to receive that endorsement. So we were very adamant that that was something that we wanted in our planning. And we worked with Water Conservancy District to adopt at least, if not better, what those standards were. And so we received that endorsement there in November with them, which I thought was an awesome thing that we were excited to be able to share with the community. And then maybe just a couple items that's kind of on the horizon for Celente. We have worked with Washington City on relocating a water main, so we appreciate the collaboration and working with the different departments to bring that to fruition, and so we're excited to see that take place.
See, and I don't even have to refer you to Blake for that. You've already been working with him.
That's right. Thank you, Blake. We do have, again, noting that the parade is a big deal, so we do have 3 parade builders for next year. So you'll see some additional residences that are out of the ground. We're excited to continue to drive traffic out to the Washington City area and promote the beauty that's there. Like I mentioned, the La Pareja Club, that kickoff will take place this year. So you'll start to see some vertical build there. Currently, we do have 3 additional phases. Because of the reception so far with our lots that are available, we need to replenish our inventory. So we have 3 smaller phases that are currently under construction and that we'll look to deliver here in the upcoming months with some varying size lots. This first neighborhood really has 7,000 square foot lots, is about our smallest, up to about an acre, at least in this neighborhood. And so those are going to be delivered here in the next couple months. And then secondly, we do, as I mentioned, there's different neighborhoods within Celente. La Pareja is our estate neighborhood. The next neighborhood will introduce that smaller and more dense product, right? So some townhomes, some smaller single family homes. We'll get to some condos to provide that. That'll be just to the west of where La Pareja currently sits. And so we're just finishing up some of the design there and excited to kind of bring that product to that area as well. And so we're looking to start that here this year as well. I did just want to share as far as updates go, so you can kind of see some of the progress that we're making. So our club component there, that you can see that amenity that'll be in the neighborhood. You can also see just the phases that I was talking about. The green phases show what we have on the ground today. You can see there's only really 4 lots remaining, and that's why we are in development of the next couple phases with quite a few already reserved before they're complete. So just some depictions there that you can see as far as
Ryan, so I see the road there through La Pareja. How soon will that road connect to the Grapevine Trailhead? I know it's cut.
Yeah. So we actually, in part of our construction, that road is cut all the way. So we have construction access that's actually over by the Grapevine Trailhead. So we're using it as construction access. As we build out our phases, that road will obviously be memorialized. It'll be the firm actual road that's built out on that. So it's just a matter of time again as we phase out. So good question.
How big are those properties? When I was trying to zoom in for the yellow, you can't really see.
They're about 7,000 square foot would be our smallest lot size there. And in the yellow ones, you're not quite to half acre, right? Really our bigger lots are kind of the higher up you get in Celente. You can kind of see the lighter green ones that have a lot of the reserved on it. Those ones get up to about 1 acre. Whereas when we get to the neighborhood to the west, that one will have 4,000 square foot lots, right? So you have some alley load product, you'll have smaller single family detached, as well as some townhomes that sit there as well. And those of course aren't depicted on this map here.
Looks like you've had some good success in selling and reserving lots.
We have,
That's gotta make you feel good.
It does. I mean, anytime you start a new project, right, you come with a great vision and you hope that people get it. And it's been exciting to see the reception. Also knowing this parcel, and hopefully, the sentiment is understood. We feel like there's a stewardship there, and we want to make sure we're taking care of and enhancing that land that's there. and being able to provide that level of experience for everyone there. As Mayor mentioned, those trailheads and the trail access is a pivotal part, not just to Salente, but the entire neighborhood. And so that's been a pivotal part of the master plan and designing, right? So that access can be there and people can go and experience that miles and miles of beautiful trails that are out there. So
You think that one of the biggest drivers in selling or reserving the lots that are listed, is it the price point, or is it view, or is it accessibility? What are you seeing as the main driver for folks that are buying those?
it's a great question. I think it's a little bit of all the above, right? Because you get certain buyers that are view driven, right? You'll get certain buyers that are more club driven in the amenities, I should say. And then you do get some that obviously are price point driven. Knowing that this parcel in our partnership with the State Trust Lands of Utah, so there's certain parameters that they wanted to see out of this, and we're kind of conforming to that and trying to deliver on what their expectations are as well. But it is a little bit of a mix, right? As people that maybe want views, want the accessibility to the beautiful landscape that's there, and as well as the price point. The next couple slides are more just that next neighborhood that I was going to mention. So Altamira is the name of that neighborhood. You can see kind of some of our renderings here. And this is this next slide. Sorry, it shows a little bit of that rendering. And then you'll see a little bit density-wise. This shows different lot sizes, the product mix that's there, where the commercial is. Kind of the yellow boxes depict kind of our commercial, I hate to call it district, but kind of like the high street, where you'll have some light retail, boutique dining that are all on that high street next to the yellow boxes there. And again, we'll build out kind of up towards that, but at least it gives a good depiction of the product mix that's there, the variation that different buyers can come and get different product, not just estate lots, but then they can get townhomes, they can get the smaller single families as well.
Yeah, that's a really neat plat. It's cool how you have that kind of downtown component and some of that park amenity in the center too, as it's depicted here as well.
Yeah, so there's just more rendering that kind of show the livability of the neighborhood with the product types, as well as conceptual renderings of the different park or amenities that'll be part of that neighborhood. And that's really my update. Glad to answer any questions you might have.
Council questions for Ryan?
For the accessibility to the trailheads, is there places for people, is there a few parking spots, or how will people, when they want to access the trails?
At future build out or currently?
Yeah, what will that look like?
Yeah, future build out, there will be designated spaces, right? So I won't say to the grapevine extent, right? But memorialized trailheads, right? So the public can access that. As far as how many parking stalls, they're further down the road for us. We don't have that level of detail planned, other than they are earmarked as trailhead access points for the public to continue to gain that access for them.
So we're talking Elephant Arch and is it Dino Tracks?
Yeah, Dino Cliffs, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dino Tracks, you can see the cutout for the trail on your map.
Yeah.
So this created this corridor right on the east side to.
Tell us a little more tell us what you can about the hospitality element.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a vision standpoint is we do see a hotel kind of sitting at the top parcel there, right? Obviously it takes two to tango, and we got some work to do as far as this build out, but the vision is to bring a hotel to the top, a resort, kind of the top part of that parcel. And so we'll see timing wise as to how long it'll take to kind of get to that point, but we see it as a kind of a nice fit within the overall community. It sits kind of above that retail and dining area, kind of off that beaten path that way, but definitely a component to the overall master plan.
Council, further comments, questions for Mr. Coates?
I had one last question, Mayor.
Jeremy.
In the Altamira neighborhood, and I won't hold you to this, but are you planning on building the entire loop road with that section? I know we've kind of gone back and forth on when that would happen.
I don't think the entire loop road up front, right? I think there's a phasing plan for us to be able to bring it in at the right time. I mean, obviously in markets like we're in, it's tricky as far as how quickly we build out some of those things. It's going to probably be more chunks and working with what phases need to be brought in from a connectivity standpoint at the right time.
So how many phases do you anticipate Altamira would have? I mean,
it could be.
Just depends on
market conditions. Yeah, again, we don't want to get too far out as far as how quickly we build it. We want to make sure it's kind of right size. I mean, I think our plan that we have laid out kind of with those renderings shows like 8 or 9 phases. But again, do we sub-phase those? It really just depends on, again, how quickly the product's received and when we need to bring on the next phases, and amenities as well.
But Ryan, let me,
A lot of units, so.
just to mention, you know, I mean, when you get past so many units, second access, so the second phase will start taking the second access to the west a little farther in the future. It just might not build the whole loop road. There'll be connections and kind of work their way out, I'm assuming.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's kind of the same with the amenities, right? Is we want to be cognizant of residents that are there. Can they burden all of the amenity costs that are brought in? So, you know, again, just how much you bring in at once, we want to be cognizant of that so that the buyers there are not overburdened at certain times, right? So kind of phase in those different components. So,
Thanks for the update. It's exciting.
thank you.
A lot of really, really nice homes being built up there. Okay. Next item is our City Alliance Program. Aaron O'Brien, Dr. O'Brien, come in. We've been planning this for quite some time, and finally we got you over here.
Yes, no, you gotta love everyone's schedules, right?
Well, we're glad to have you, Dr. O'Brien, and take it away. We've got about 15 to 20 minutes, whatever time you need.
Okay, beautiful, thank you so much. So instead of this being an information item for the general public, I'm actually here to talk to you all. The City Alliance Program has been running for about 5 years now at Utah Tech, and it is part of our strategic plan that is just wrapping up. So, there we go. So the big part of, I serve on campus as the Director of Community Engaged Learning, and the City Alliance Program falls under this. So the way that things typically work is, this is an opportunity for students to work with off-campus entities to help them. So I want to make it very clear which way the majority of the service goes. This is not the university looking for help with their students. This is our faculty and our students looking to help our community. And the reality is that we've worked now with, we started with St. George, we've worked with, Santa Clara. We've worked with Laverkin. We're working with Hilldale next year. We have been told that we should plan on this program continuing, which means that at some point, possibly, Washington City could be a partner. But in the meantime, it doesn't mean that there can't be other ways in which the university can help. Our students need real-world experiences, but we want to make sure that they're ones that really do help our partners. So let's see. This all comes back to, 5 years ago when we had as one of our major goals that the university will have its community as our campus, right? Things cannot be limited to classrooms anymore. That is just not the reality of it. As one of my colleagues likes to say, when our students graduate and they go on to work, it's not as if somebody's going to say, I want you to solve problem number 12 in chapter 2, right? That's not what we're training them to do. So we need to train them to do things in the real world. And ideally, it helps you all. I put this link in here in case you're interested in the model. We belong to this international organization that kind of uses this model for working with municipalities. The way the program works, it's pretty simple, fortunately. It's a 3-year program. The first year, if you're interested in joining, you apply. We normally do an RFP sort of in August. And we spend a year planning. Because it does take that long normally, not only to make sure that we've figured out all the ways in which we can serve a city, but that we have all the resources lined up to make sure that those projects are going to be successful. One of the things, Rick Rosenberg loves to joke that if you partner with us, I will be coming for your data, because that's been one of the big holdups in helping cities, is just making sure that we have the data we need to work on the projects for you. So we set that whole year aside for getting ready. We have a year of implementation, and then we have a year of wrapping up and reporting out. And again, this is professors and students working on projects that the city needs done. Okay, so to give you a sense, here are some that we've already worked on. And this, I tried to give an assortment of ones that kind of cover the range. So everything from fairly simple graphic design for signs, designing public art and murals, and even adding detail to the public art plan out in Springdale. Sorry, I left them out as one of our partners. We're currently working on a native plant garden in a public park for Laverkin. We've repeatedly done community needs assessments, so these are surveys, collecting data that are useful to cities about the residents and what they want, so that as you're trying to figure out where to allocate your limited resources, you know what things people are interested in having. All sorts of stuff having to do with water quality. As you can imagine, we live in the desert. So checking things, checking what happens with flood issues and water quality relating to that. We have GIS professors and students. Cities seem to always need a little bit of help with that, right? Given all the assessment, asset mapping that you all have to do. But it really is across the board. So some kind of more unique ones that you might not have thought about. Next year, we have a group of accounting professors and their students going through a shipping container behind the town hall of Hilldale and reconstructing all of their financial records. They're going to start with the last 10 years, and that's what City Alliance is going to support, but they're going to go back further. And we don't know what we're going to find, but it's going to be interesting, right? We've got folks involved in website design. I mean, you can read the list. And it includes serving your community members. So one of the things that we ended up doing for Santa Clara is we developed a small business series of workshops that we brought to the city so that small businesses didn't have to take time to go to the small business workshops that are offered over in St. George up on the Mesa. So again, there's a lot of different areas. I would say at this point, the only projects that we really haven't been able to do has been, we haven't been able to do really serious, hardcore, like master's level urban planning. And it's been limited landscape design. Like a native plant garden, that's totally fine. You want a whole park done. We would need to partner with some folks, which we can connect you with to do that kind of work, but we don't have professors that do that. So with that, I appreciate the 10 to 15 minutes because I prefer, instead of me telling you about what we can do for you, this is an opportunity ideally for you all to think about where you might need some help. It seems like every city has got offices that have got projects that are on their to-do list, but they may not be like the main priority, but they really want to get them done and they don't have the budget, they don't have the staff, they don't have the expertise. We all have those laundry lists. I mean, I have got those at home, right? So this would be an opportunity if you have any questions, if you have any ideas. And while the City Alliance program is a very formal program where I basically work to bring, the intellectual and, labor of the university to serve the city for a full year, we also continue to work on lots of small projects. So if there's something that you guys are thinking, gee, it would be really nice if some students and a professor could just do this. I know that this is more presentation as a working meeting. Normally I do working meetings with city councils and we sit and we brainstorm. I realize we don't have time for that, but if you do have any questions or project ideas and want to know if we can do them, I'm here to answer questions.
Council, questions, ideas, brainstorming?
I'd only say that I think it's great to get the students involved and do, we have small projects, but I'd leave that to our staff if we have something.
Yeah.
I mean, your timeline looks like it still takes some time to get through the process and how you set it up. And
yes.
So, I mean, and I think, I don't know, I would respect what Jeremy read, our manager decides. If there's something that can work, so I don't know.
No worries, of course.
We have a lot of big projects that, take professionals to do that stuff, but maybe
100%.
there's something that we can have. I don't know. That's how I would look at it. There's something that makes sense for students. I'm always about getting the students some real life experience. So.
And one of the things that's been really interesting is as we've worked with cities is that in those big projects that often require, some professional involvement, we've actually been able to save some cities money by having students do legwork, by collecting initial data to make it easier to put out an RFP, when you're trying to hire somebody, things like that. So even if you do have big ones, it's surprising how much, a couple of professors and their students can kind of save some money or save some time on those things. Yeah. But
so are there any costs to the city to partner?
It varies. Currently the university supports this financially. We have had projects that have gotten kind of expensive. And we've had city partners that have had budget to spare. So Springdale chipped in on several projects because, they're charging everybody parking fees and they had some money that they could contribute. Normally, the fees have been tied to things that the city will then own. So we've done projects where software was necessary, and if the city wanted to host something on their website, then they would need to, you'd need to have the software to be able to do that. In terms of, doing website redesign, the design gets done for free, but those designs often come with, you have to have these hosting costs and things like that. So while they can do the upfront work, there are subscriptions and things like that, that while we might cover those costs for the first year while the students are working on things, at some point they need to transition over to the city. So that's probably more where there's costs. Yeah, the big investment is time, is making, we don't want to do any of this without your feedback, and we don't want to do any of this without your oversight. So this isn't some professor running off with their pet project. This is you all saying what you need, and us making sure that that's what gets done. So it does require a little bit of staff time.
Council, further comments, questions? If not, I'm going to ask the city manager for some input on this, but I also want to just point out, we've got a lot of staff here. If you have some ideas, if you've heard Dr. O'Brien and you're familiar with the project, and you have a thought that came to mind, will you please reach out to myself or to Jeremy and we can kind of connect that? Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting project, and we also like working with students when we can. It's helpful for us as well, but we have a lot of department heads in the room, and I'm sure they'll come up with plenty of ideas.
Right.
Probably a matter of picking the right idea that works with you and with us.
Yeah, 100%. So the way that applications normally go is they're normally fairly low key and they don't require a ton of detail. So it's more sort of general areas where work could happen. And then what we do in that year is we hold meetings where we bring together representatives from the city who understand the problem and our professors. So that way we can have conversations and figure out what's possible. And it's been my experience that not only do we really get down to details, but projects explode real fast because folks don't realize all the things that professors and students can do for cities. And so what looks like a little tiny project turns into something much bigger frequently. Yeah, thanks.
Well done, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
So the final item on the workshop agenda, and we do have a hard stop at 5:30, is a RAP tax application review. So just for the record, we'll make note that the council will not be taking action on RAP applications during our regular meeting tonight. And the process is changing. So this particular item is a discussion amongst the council after Jeremy presents to the council on, based on the briefing document and the applications that have been submitted. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me just go over this. We've been through this quite a few times, but we've made some changes in the last little while. Based on the code changes that we adopted in December 2023 and then discussions last year and again this year during our council retreat, the applicants were asked to give a brief outline of their, sorry, not a brief outline, but they did their application. And I think all of you have had that in your packets. The council did for this year, just as a reminder, 25 budget year, and that's what's been included in the council budget or the city budget. The council also added some language that I just want to remind you from the code. They added language that said, due to the limited amount of RAP tax revenue that will be allotted to Washington City, the funds awarded by the Washington City Council shall be limited to entities located within Washington City or which provide significant tax revenue to Washington City. All other projects outside of Washington City have the ability to petition Washington County or other cities for funding. That was the sort of the change that we made in December of 2023. So you do have in the briefing document each applicant and their requests, and then we also put in the previous awards that those applicants have received from the city in probably the past 5-6 years. So that's my presentation. Certainly can answer any questions that you might have if I can.
Council, what questions do you have for the city manager?
Mayor, would it be appropriate just to have the city manager go down the list and give a little bit of background on each one of the requests?
Entirely, yes. Go ahead with that, Jeremy, if you don't mind.
All right, I'm gonna try to do this as well as I can. The Washington City Youth Council has requested $50,000, and that is for a statue, a Quentin Nyson statue. The Film Southern Utah and Media Arts is requesting $18,500, and that is for videography and a documentary that they're proposing.
Was that with some of the footage that they did at Veterans Day? It seems like.
I believe so. I don't know that they specified that in their request. The Washington City Historical Museum has a request of $48,000, and that request is for upgrades to the museum, various structural upgrades.
Can I ask a question on that one? Has there been any bids that have been received or anything that's just kind of preliminary? Okay.
I don't think that any of them have gone out and got solid bids.
Okay.
I think they have estimates.
And just, I don't want to get too far off this, but the Washington City Youth Council and 50,000, is that the total price for the sculpture you mentioned, or is that partial?
And then Tara, you're familiar with the applications as well, so if you'll just come to the front row in case council has questions for you. We always keep you on your toes.
Do you want me to answer that one?
Sure.
Let me pull it up.
This mic is the perfect size for you, by the way.
I believe the total cost of the statue, and I'm pulling it up on my program right now, was, I want to say it was $65,000.
It was 60, and then with the citizens paying $10,000.
Yeah, 60,000 for the total budget, and they're asking 50.
Did they say where they want to place it? I haven't heard about this at all, so I just don't know anything about it.
So
Where they want it in the circle of honor, or?
Well,
No.
on city, no.
The city would be responsible to create the base and decide where to go, but they would like to have it somewhere in the downtown area.
Yeah. The project request asked for it to go on Nyson Corner, but I don't know that would necessarily work because that's part of the RFQ that you guys just approved, so, but that's where they asked for it.
Yeah, I
at the
think
time.
that would probably be a TBD.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
not super familiar with this, but I do think, we've had a few statues recently. They look wonderful. I think maybe certainly Quentin Nyson was someone who was very influential within the community. And I think some of the urgency maybe on this particular application, I don't want to speak for the applicant, but I think some of that is just recognizing that we have a master sculptor in Jerry Anderson, and he's not going to be around doing what he does forever. So I think that's part of they're bringing this forward at this time. But the manager is right. There hasn't been a location designated exactly. But I think the idea would be for it to be somewhere downtown.
So then moving on for the museum, we have the Washington City Concert Band who've requested $2,500. And you can see in the past, we've allotted that usually for music or other items that they need. So that's the request. Southwest Symphony Orchestra has requested $10,000. Tuacahn Center for the Arts, $25,000. And that's to make upgrades to their facility. And they had that detailed in their request. And then Encore Performing Arts, $7,000. Those are your applications. They add up to $161,000 worth of requests.
We have 31% of total ask is what we have in our budget, right? So we budgeted 50,000 and we have an ask of it.
And I appreciate bringing that, Councilmember. I just think we can't fund everything, so we have to just work on what we can fund with our budget. And I look at it, we should spread around a little bit for everything. And some things, maybe this year's not the year, some of them, so.
Whenever we talk about RAP, Council Mayor, I always think of highest best use. RAP was intended for the benefit of the majority or the most of our citizens, in being able to use it and have it impact everyday lives for the better and those kind of things. So I will be considering that on these, so.
It is great comments, Council. There's no doubt that I think like a lot of our own personal budgets, there's more things that we would like than we have means to do. But I can tell you that I know this council values the contributions by these organizations. And really, right now, this is just an opportunity to have that preliminary discussion. These will be action items later, but this gives an opportunity to ask questions, discuss amongst yourselves, amongst the body, for kind of feedback and some ideas on.
Mayor, may I say something?
Go ahead.
Councilman Ivey, go ahead.
Bill, please, no, go ahead.
I read through all of these applications. I think every single one of these is very worthwhile. And it would be great if we had enough money to fund all of them, but, we don't. So I think I love what Councilman Ivey said is sometimes we have to think of, where can we put the money where the most of our citizens can benefit from it, and I think I agree with Councilman Ivey. As I kind of digest this, I think that's kind of the perspective I'm going to take, which one of these is going to affect most people in our community and, that anyway. So thank you.
Not only presently, but for future is something to think about too. I think, how impact our community now and in the future. I feel like we've approved some RAP tech, somebody that, that generations will be able to use it. And so that's going to be on my mind too as we go through this as well. Sorry, you were.
No, not at all. I always would rather listen to you.
Councilman Coates, do you have something to say before we let Councilman Ivey get a word in?
Hey, we should just close this meeting and then.
He always does that to me. No, I was just back to the statue, Quentin Nyson was a tremendous individual that really benefited our community. We all can remember the smells going into his store, and if you needed something, he had it, if he could find it in there and all that. But I was just wondering how we would go about the design of that, whether our staff could help in the designing of that statue, or if the arts group, or what. I just don't understand the process, because I think we'd want kind of a say of what the look is to have it consistent with what we have in the city, if the council is inclined to consider this. I would just like that answer first, though.
I don't know that I have the answer. Tara, do you have any? And I'm not advocating for any particular project. I'm just kind of telling you a little bit what I know.
Nothing was submitted as far as a proposed design or anything, but I can certainly reach out to our applicant and get some additional information if you'd like me to. It says it's the Washington City Youth Council, but I can reach out to Carmen Snow. She's the one that submitted the application.
So it follows a process like it did with the last, which came in 2022. The city wasn't super involved in, helping direct the look of the statue, but we were involved in place. But you can certainly just make it a part of the application or part of the approval.
So I'll since we're talking about the statue, I'll just let the council know where I'm standing. I think we've done some great statues. And we should maybe put the money elsewhere right now, is my opinion. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm not saying Nyson statue would be nice. They have a good thing, but I definitely am concerned about us spending $50,000 on that. When they are nice, they're beautiful, but I feel like there's the need elsewhere to put that amount at this time in our current budget. But that's just where I'm standing, just so everyone knows where I'm at on the statue. The other ones I haven't had a lot of, I got to decide how I think we should break it up. I think we should try to do as much as we can for as many, some we can, some we can't. I'll be very clear, I don't think Tuacahn, we sometimes approved them, sometimes not, but in this round with the amount of applicants, I think we should move on from Tuacahn. But that's where I'm at, 2 items.
I think the one thing we can all agree on is we love the Washington City Concert Band.
Yes.
So, we know you could, but that's one of the things that we love about you guys, Sarah. So that's the one thing we can all agree on. And Councilman Coates is right. We've had a number of statues recently, and it's also one of those things where I don't think him saying that we've had a lot of statues is anywhere saying that we don't love Quentin Nyson and the impact that he's had on that community. I think you
no,
need to separate
definitely.
those two things.
I hope that didn't come across
It
like
didn't.
that,
I just
Mayor.
wanted to make it clear
No,
that
I
way.
think the Nyson
because
family's great. It's a historical thing. Just when we have to look at our budget, and we've done some recently.
You're absolutely right.
I mean, we've got one coming on the way. We had one we just did. We did the Buffalo out front with Utah Tech. Like, we did we've done those things. I just look at, hey, maybe we should, with the amount of applications we have, we need to look at a different avenue at this time. Maybe when we have our RFP completed on the old grocery store and stuff like that, something like that can happen. I just think we're a little ahead of where we are at with it. And so I look at it as a budget standpoint that I need to, but definitely don't let that come across that I know the impact the Nisons have on the community, and I appreciate what they've done over the years.
Yeah, and I know you do, and that's why I was just trying to make that clear too. Further conversation, council. Otherwise, we'll
Mayor, if I could, I agree. I'm not sure if it's the right time right now for a statue, although I think it's a fabulous idea. In the application, she described Quentin statue welcoming people into Washington, and may not be the right time, but can I tell a quick Quentin
Please,
story?
yes.
Okay, so when I read the application, I remembered in the mid-'70s or so, my grandma woke up in the morning, she was cooking breakfast on a Sunday, and she didn't have any eggs. I think she had already mixed up. She needed some eggs, so she called, it was a Sunday morning, she called up Quentin and said, Quentin, can you open your store for like 5 minutes? I need some eggs, you know. I'm in the middle of my breakfast, I have no eggs. He says, okay, come on over to the store. And so she drove up to the store, and he opened the store, she went and got some eggs, and she went to pay him. And she said, and Quentin said, Phyllis, I'm not gonna take your money, it's a Sabbath day, this is the gift for you today. So anyway, that's the kind of guy he was, just a great guy, great community member, and anyway, so I was just reminded of that story that my grandma told me, so.
Mayor, can I mention something too? I love that story, Councilman. You always have such great insight on things like that. But what I loved is when Quentin shared his experience with being in the Battle of the Bulge in World War II. He shared that story one day, and I'll tell you that I'll always remember it. And, you know, people like that is why I think that our community is so great today, is because of their sacrifice and their contributions.
Well said, council. Thank you. Continue to have those individual conversations amongst yourselves, and we'll have this on a future agenda for further consideration and motion, but that won't happen tonight. It was really good meetings. Appreciate everybody's involvement this evening. This time I'll look for a motion to adjourn until 6 p.m. where we'll start our regular meeting.
So made, Mayor.
Motion by Councilman Ivy. Second by Councilman Coates. All in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Councilman Belliston, are you with us virtually?
I am.
All right, welcome. Thanks for making the time to be here tonight. We'll get started here in just a few minutes. Actually, shouldn't be a few minutes. Hopefully it's shorter than that. All right, good evening. Today is Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. We are at City Hall in the Washington City Council Chamber for our regular meeting. Our meetings are streamed live at washingtoncity.org and archived for later viewing. We appreciate the Interfaith Council. At this time, I'll invite my friend Marina Anderson with the Center for Spiritual Living to start the meeting.
Good job, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. My name, as Mayor Staley said, is Marina Anderson, and I'm a lay member of the Center for Spiritual Living St. George, and I'm happy to be with you here today to do your invocation. So I'd like to invite everyone to just take a deep breath and just be really present where you are. Let your chair hold you firm. You have nothing to worry about in this moment other than to just be present. And I would like to acknowledge that there is but one God, one being that is the love and source of our life. And I know that I am a reflection of that God, and I know that to be true of every other person that I see. Every face that I see is a face of God. And may we remember that as we interact and connect and do the business of whatever our day holds. May we function with the divine characteristics of integrity and love and compassion and respect, and know that those things will bring grand results in whatever we do in each day of our life. And we know this to be true, and we say it with gratitude and reverence, and so it is. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for setting a wonderful tone. I've invited Keaton Earl of the Washington City Youth Council to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Keaton. I will make note, council, that we do have need to go to closed session this evening. And it has been recommended that we move item 6B to follow 8A. If there's nothing else on the agenda, I'll call for a motion to approve as stated.
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilman Henderson.
Second.
Second by Councilman Coates. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The agenda is approved unanimously. And I will just make note that we appreciate Councilman Belliston joining us electronically. In terms of announcements, Washington City has been a Tree City USA for how many years now, Paul? 13 years. And part of that means that we celebrate Arbor Day, and we do that with an official proclamation. So it'll be my opportunity now to read a mayoral proclamation in regards to Arbor Day. Whereas in 1872, the Nebraska Board of Agriculture established a special day to be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can be a solution to combating climate change by reducing the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cutting heating and cooling costs, moderating the temperature, cleaning the air, producing life-giving oxygen, and providing habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now, therefore, I, Cress Staley, Mayor of Washington City, do hereby proclaim April 25th, 2025 as Arbor Day in Washington City, and I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And further, I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the hearts and promote the well-being of this and future generations. I will note that Commissioner Almquist has a tree that he wants to plant in our George Washington Plaza, but that tree will be too big for that area. So I told the commissioner that we'll find another place for him to plant that tree. Paul, maybe we can arrange and do that on Arbor Day. Continuing with announcements, Monday, April 21st at 6 p.m. is the George Washington statue unveiling and Cotton Days kickoff. And that will be at 6 p.m. and that's on George Washington Boulevard, just east of the Red Cliffs Temple. We'll actually be closing the street down for seating, and we've got actually a really, really nice program that's been a collaborative effort amongst cities and the county. This time I'd like to invite our Cotton Days 2025 chair, Sherry Tate Staley, and she will give us an update on Cotton Days events, and I'll just make note that you can find more details at cottondays.org. Sherry, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Excited about Cotton Days. We're trying to figure out how many years we've been doing it. I know I was recruited about 40 years ago to be a part of Cotton Days, so we know it's been going on at least that long. But we're excited. We have a great volunteer committee that have been a part of it for years. And like Mayor said, we are starting off the kickoff with the George Washington statue unveiling. And it's a beautiful statue. I've had a sneak peek of it, and it's exciting. And artist Jerry Anderson has done a great job on that statue. We used to do something every night of the week, and we've kind of pushed it all to the end of the week. So starting on April 25th, we will start our Cotton Days with a great breakfast from our Washington City Lion Club that have done it for years and years. We'll have a parade at 9 a.m. Then we'll open up the park to have our traditional bounce houses and Lions Club breakfast I talked about, 5K run. We will also have the Washington City Youth Council have created some fun games there to have in the park. We have the car show that will be at Nyson Park, which is the water wheel park, if you're not familiar with that. And our mayor will be in our new renovated Heritage Hall, giving some history. We'll have weavers in there. We'll be learning how to do quilts in there, entertainment throughout the day. The tractor pulls, which are a local favorite. the Antique Tractor Association will be there, and they will be at 1 o'clock this year over in the old dirt lot by the old Nyson store. If you don't know where that is, it's the dirt lot on Telegraph. I think there's only a few left, run right down here in the middle of town. And then that night, we'll have a great concert by the Ed Tracy Band, a little bit of rock and roll, a little bit of Led Zeppelin and Bruno Mars, and Ed's quite the entertainer if you don't know him. It'll be great fun. We'll also, I missed the Cotton Days Ball somewhere in there, but that's going to be on Friday night, and the movie in the park. So the movie in the park will be up, so that's a fun thing. And then on Sunday at 6 p.m., we're excited to have another open house for our beautiful Heritage Hall that has been renovated, and have a rededication of that hall and honor the families that helped make that happen when it was built originally. And then the old beautiful museum will be open to the public to hear the stories of the history. And I think they'll be serving a little bit of pie that night too. I heard the pie ladies are getting out their aprons, so that will be really fun. And we just want to invite, of course, City Council and all the community members, if there's new members here that have not felt a part or been a part and want to feel like this is their hometown, this is the event that you want to show up at and just start being a part of. These events are what make our community unique. We have very rich history and traditions, and it's something that we all get to enjoy. So I just want to invite everybody to come out and have a great time with us. Thank you.
Wonderful. And Sherry, while you're here, I want to express on behalf of the council, we appreciate all of the work and the heart and soul that you put into Cotton Days this year and every year. Thank you to you and your committee. We're really looking forward to another great event.
It's a great event, and I forgot to mention, probably the most important part is our field trips that we do during the week with our second graders, where they get to learn about the history of our community and our county, and Rosie and John Kirkland do a great job with that.
They sure do.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Council, any announcements that I may have missed? I recognize that the fair is coming up, but I think I'm more focused on Cotton Days.
We are, Mayor, only the only thing that really involves us is the Washington County Fair Parade, which will be Saturday morning. If we can get kind of a council, if you can be there Saturday morning to ride on the float and get a count for how many and stuff, we'll get that in motion, Mayor.
Wonderful.
This Saturday, the 12th. And then the only other thing I would mention, Mayor, is on Friday, we've got the league mid-year conference for the League of Cities and Towns, April. That's right. 17th, 18th. So
good training, good interaction.
Council or staff, or there's a lot of breakout sessions that are specialized for individuals. So
wonderful.
Mention that.
Thank you, Councilman. And then also, we've invited some of the youth council to join with the council on our float.
Yeah, we have.
Okay, great. Anything else? Next item, declarations of abstention and conflicts. Anything to declare? Seeing none, we'll move to item 4, consent agenda. This is approval of minutes from the city council meetings of 3/26/25. It's the board audit report from March 2025, and a local consent, which is to approve a single event permit for Zion Harley Davidson grand reopening located at 2345 North Coral Canyon Boulevard. That information is all in your packet. I'll call for a motion to approve unless there is any item you would like to pull or have further clarification on.
Mayor, I don't have anything to pull. I've reviewed the minutes and I looked through the board audit, and the consent seems really good for Zion Harley for a reopening of their facility out in Coral Canyon. So I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
You've heard the motion by Councilman Ivy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Coates. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The consent agenda is approved unanimously. Item 5A. Consideration to approve the surplus sale of the fire department brush truck. Fire Chief Matt Evans. We ready to part with this? No sentimental value?
This is an exciting problem to have. It's been a while since we had a problem of this nature in the fire department. If you recall, the last few apparatus that were purchased were done so in an emergency nature, and because their predecessor was no longer working and not repairable. So
We only have so much baling wire and duct tape.
yeah, it only gets you by so far. So we appreciate actually having this problem, and it's really due to all of your support and what you've done to change over the fleet. It brings us to this problem of surplusing one of the vehicles that still has some value actually. And so, as you know, we've replaced those brush trucks and tried to spread them out due to the significance of their purchase. And so really we will still have a spare, and yet we don't need to. So time to part with that. As we saw when we tried to purchase a used vehicle, the used market is doing pretty good due to how much everything is selling for now. And so when a neighboring agency had actually heard that we had acquired a new truck, they started calling and asked if they could acquire said vehicle. And so, and that's really why we brought it to you to ask. Kind of takes it out of the norm. Usually it just goes out to auction. And so the amount we gave you in that 40,000, we feel like is a really fair deal for them. And we don't have to wait and wonder, and we get to help somebody out in the county as well. So that's where we're asking for that.
Questions for Chief?
Yeah, Chief, I appreciate you bringing this to us. I think it's important we help our community members when we can. I mean, I think it's great that if they're open to that price and we gave them a little discount and we don't have to go through the work of, I think it's worth it at this point. That's where I feel on it. So.
Further questions, comments?
I'm ready to make a motion if anyone.
Go ahead,
wants.
Councilwoman.
I'll make a motion to approve the surplus fire department brush truck.
I have a motion by Councilwoman Casperson.
Second.
Second by Councilman Coates. All in favor? Councilman Belliston?
The mute on. Aye.
I thought you'd be an aye on that. Thanks, Chief.
Thanks.
That surplus of that apparatus is approved unanimously, 5-0. We'll move along to ordinances, item 6A. This is,
So Mayor, may I ask, sorry, I forgot to catch this at the start of the agenda. I'd like to move item 6B till after the items 8A because they kind of coincide with each other.
that's right. So we've got that. So we'll go to 6A right now, and then 6B will be after 8A. So this is consideration to approve an ordinance for zone change Z-23-05 to change the existing A20 agricultural zoning to PUDC, Plan Unit Development Commercial, located at approximately 3650 South Washington Fields Road. Community Development Director, Assistant Director Eldon Gibb will present on this, and then I do have one really hard question for the applicant. It's not really that hard, but I do have a question for you, David. Go ahead, Eldon.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. The zone change request is for the purpose of developing the site into a commercial development. The applicant will be required and fully understands they will need to bring the design and use plan back before the city for approval prior to any work begins on the project. Again, this proposal is only for the zoning approval with no submitted project plan. This particular location has a general plan land use designation of community commercial. The surrounding zoning to this parcel is PUDC to the north, A20 to the east, PUDR and R16 to the south, and R115 to the west. The proposed zone change is in line with the general plan. The Planning Commission reviewed this request on April 2nd, 2025, and unanimously recommended approval of Z-25-05 for the zone change request from the current zoning of A20 to the proposed PUDC zoning designation. And that was based on the findings and conditions stated in the report. That concludes staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Questions for staff on this particular agenda item, on this zone change request?
Yeah, Eldon, I just want to make sure it's clear that nothing is approved as far as a use at this point, and we'll have to get deep dive into that when it comes back in the future.
And I would just add, Mayor, that it's about time. We've been waiting for commercial development out there, I really relish and welcome the process going forward, because I actually had to get a gallon of milk, and I won't tell you how far I had to drive, and a gallon of gas and different things. I don't know that that's any of their offerings, but it's good to see some infill of commercial uses for our citizens to not only not have to drive to another city where they would get the sales tax, but for the convenience and safety of our own residents. So I look forward to having this conversation and congratulate the applicants so far on this.
Thank you, Councilman. Further comments? City Manager Jeremy Red?
Mayor, I have a quick question.
Councilman Bellison, go ahead.
Eldon, is there a reason why we're showing an access point off Washington Fields Road, but nothing off George Washington?
Yeah, great question there. That was predetermined and just set at a previous date. And then to the north there on that existing property, with their approval, they were granted access to the farthest west-hand side, and it's known that this development will match up that existing access.
It'll line up
with their site, correct?
So Councilman, to add some more to Eldon's answer, what you're seeing in that pullout was conveyed to the city at the time that road and its right-of-way was acquired. And so the reason it's showing there has nothing to do with the application, has everything to do with the history of the city acquired that when they acquired the right-of-way for that widened road.
Okay, all right, that makes a heck of a lot more sense.
Yeah, if you look at the city's GIS map on a broader scope than this capture, you'll see multiples of those on the opposite side of the road as well as down towards the south. And so those are just the planned roadways that were identified when the right-of-way was acquired.
Okay, thank you.
Jeremy.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to kind of clarify the question that Councilman Coates had. I think it's a procedural question. Normally, when somebody comes for a PUDC, they bring the entire plan. They bring a use list and all of their documentation. But our code does allow for an applicant to, let me get this right. They can defer their planning and their use list. They get the approval, but the deferred conceptual plans have a time limit of 18 months. And then they go through the same process again. So they go back through a public hearing, the planning commission, and back to the city council. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that, because that is a different process than maybe we normally see when something comes before.
And that would be up to the applicant, because what I see that might be a negative in this is the timeline. If they chose to bring the application and the use as one, it seems like they should have that option, because sometimes timelines are proved to be very difficult.
They absolutely have the option of bringing it all together. If they choose this option, which they've chosen to defer it, they have 18 months to bring the deferred submittals.
So Jeremy, I thought it got set up to where the zoning could go in place, but then, like on that stuff up by me with Elevated, when that came through, they waited on their development agreement, and after they had got their site plans and all that stuff in, and that's when it almost timed out. Shouldn't the zoning stay?
In this case, that's
if
correct.
it gets zoned to a PUDC, it stays as the PUDC until the entitlement side comes through, and that had a time limit on it.
Our code reads deferred conceptual plans will have a time limitation of 18 months. So there is a time limit on the conceptual plan. Yeah.
Okay.
The one you're talking about was a little bit different because it had a development agreement that may or may not be part of this approval.
Great.
Okay.
Further discussion before I invite the applicant forward? Or council, do you have questions for the applicant?
There's no questions for me because there's nothing to review at this point.
Okay. I do have one question for the applicant, but you're not required to come forward. It's just tongue in cheek. Will we see at Cotton Days this year? Which events will we, yes, David, which events at Cotton Days will we see you at this year? Sherry's back there wondering. I mean, she's gonna be your neighbor down there. Okay. Get you on one of those surplus brush trucks or something. Okay. I'm gonna be watching for you. All right, council, I'll call for a motion to approve item 6A, which is a zone change as stated.
Mayor, I'll make that motion that we approve a zone change Z-25-05 to change from existing Ag 20 zoning to PUDC located at approximately 3650 South Washington Field Road with the findings and conditions provided by staff and the condition that they have to go back through the process as the code to get the final.
I can't.
I think I heard a second, Troy, or Councilman Bellison. Did I hear a second?
Yeah, I seconded it. I got a funny delay, so I might have jumped the gun.
Okay, there you go. All right, we've got a motion by Councilman Coates, a second by Councilman Bellison. This is an ordinance, so we'll start with you, Councilman Belliston.
Aye.
Henderson.
Aye.
Coates.
Aye.
Ivy. Councilwoman Casperson.
Aye.
That ordinance is approved unanimously. You don't have to hang around if you don't want to. You've been to plenty of these meetings. All right, have a good night. Congratulations. All right, we're going to come back to item 6B in a little bit. So right now we're going to move on to item 7, resolution 7A. This is a consideration to approve a resolution accepting the 2025-2026 tentative budget for Washington City and setting the public hearing date. We are ahead of the game. Brian Brown, take it away, my friend.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So I have a brief presentation for the tentative budget, that highlights some key points. We'll jump into that. So some of the budget assumptions in this budget, we made the assumption there'll be 730 building permits this year, 219 north of the river and 511 south. We also had asked the departments to include items that they were at least 80% expected to complete. The budget, it's quite a process. We actually started the budget in October of last year, looking at capital, and then we looked at operating budget started in January, and the city manager and myself sit down with each of the departments and go over their budgets and their request. And then we put everything into our accounting system and then review it all and come up with the tentative budget. Another item in the budget is the health insurance premiums are expected to increase by 1.6%. And I have a slide on that. I'll show you how that works near the end of the presentation. And then in the past, we have what we call the percent coverage. So for fiscal year 24, the percent coverage for the community center was 66%, and over the last 5 years, it's been 66%. So they're covering at least 66% of their expenses. Golf course, last year, 100%, average over the 5 years, 96%.
I would say it was actually over 100%, but Brian hates saying that it's over 100%. So.
That's just golfer bias. Don't listen to that comment down on
The
that.
golf course makes money, which is.
tell them to play.
I'm just excited it does, because we spent many years not making money, and I love that we have an asset that actually.
This is true.
There was a point
We
where
have been through the red years on that golf course.
That was all before I got here, though.
So just here's a summary of the budget. The current budget as of right now is 137 million, and the tentative budget that we're proposing is 139 million. And you can see the general fund makes up 26% of the budget. And in this budget of that 139, 57 million is capital outlay. I looked at it from last year, approximately about 15 million will roll over from last year. So some of those projects weren't complete, so they roll them over. The Wheels projects in this one, we have some Canal Trail, Wheels Park, the power's building a substation. So there's quite a few projects in this year's budget coming up. And here's a breakdown of the general fund. And mainly, you can see mainly our main revenue for the general fund is taxes. And we were pretty conservative on the taxes, property tax and sales tax when we did that estimate. The intergovernment revenue that you see there that's down, that's because in the 25 budget, we had CARES fund, or ARPA funds. So in this budget, we did not include those. They're no longer available. And then the contributions and transfer that you see on there is actually fund balance. So that's the difference there's less fund balance. As you can see, there's a 6% personnel, operating expense 10%, capital, and the general fund is actually down. We're doing less projects in this one, and then transfers are down, and that's mainly due. Last year, we transferred money to the capital projects general fund property for a project, or for the one of the land purchases. And like I said, we were pretty conservative. Now it doesn't want to work. Oh, there it goes. We were pretty conservative. Property tax, we increased by 4% this year. Jeremy and I always have a pretty good discussion about sales tax. We increased it by 2%. And then the transit room, that's for the hotels that we have in the city. We increased that because we are adding more hotels. And then everything else pretty much stayed about the same. And like I said, we were pretty conservative when we did this budget for the general fund.
We have a pretty good debate on it, but it doesn't do any good to expect to receive more money than you actually get. That's not good. And so I appreciate Brian. He's always very conservative, wanting to keep those numbers in a realm that we say 80% certain we'll collect. So if we don't,
He really likes all my spreadsheets I share with him.
Brian was Doge before Doge was cool.
Jeremy told me I couldn't do that.
Have you tried to get anything done with the BLM lately? There's nobody there. I'm wondering if Doge is cool. Anyway.
It is.
I mean, it is in a lot of ways, but there's nobody in our field office.
So the enterprise funds, the water, sewer, electric, and storm, you can see the revenues and expense there. Just so the contribution and transfers on the revenue side, that is fund balance, and then the special revenue is impact fees. So that's, our accounting system lists them that, but that's actually what they are. And then you can see the personnel, operating, capital outlay, and debt service for the enterprise funds. So we also included the following projects in the RAPTAC fund. So these are the ones that are included in RAPTAX. We included a $480,000 for trails, striping, heritage playground, re-roofing the community center, and the grants.
Can I jump in here really quick, Mayor?
Go ahead.
So we talked about RAPTAX in our work meeting. We're shifting a little bit. This is RAPTAX for next year. So this has nothing really to do with what we talked about earlier. But what we have done, again, according to what you wanted to, or at least the instruction we received, we put another $50,000 into the grant program for next year. So just wanted to go through that. One of the things that we decided to do is to spend more of our RAP funds on projects like these that benefit the city and the community members in the city. So these are the requests. I also had some council interaction that we would like to consider, and we haven't discussed it yet, so I discuss it at this point. Rebuilding the building at the Little League field. So right now that building it's at least 40 years old. It doesn't have sewer that's attached to the building. So it has an old septic tank that doesn't really work. So there are no bathrooms. There was one old bathroom in that building, and it's not operational and locked. And really the building, the request is that we look at that and rebuild the building. Services staff have estimated that's about a $500,000 expense. That would be for potentially not this budget, but the next budget. what we would like to look at is, do we want to put some RAP funds towards actually designing that building, designing the utilities that are necessary? Then we would have a number, we would be able to put it in the 26, 27 budget and do that project. That's a request that came up.
Ask what the Heritage Playground replacement is.
It's replacing the playground equipment at Heritage Park, which is in.
Yeah, but is it all worn out at this point? It's about 15 years old. I just didn't know that was
Yeah.
out. That's a big number.
I
So
brought
that's
I brought my heavy hitter, Paul Walker, in to answer any questions you have.
Paul,
about
come on up.
Specific playground equipment. You'd be surprised, I don't play on it a lot. So a lot of firsthand knowledge.
Playing on the golf course.
something about being an empty nester, Jeremy, that you.
So kind of the industry standard for a playground is 20 to 25-year lifespan. And that playground was put in 2001. So it's getting at the very edge of its lifespan. At this point, it's hard when something breaks. They don't make replacement parts, so we have to remove features and stuff as they break. Potentially, it could lead to some safety issues or close down parts of the playground. So this one's right at the edge of its life. We've got several playgrounds in that range. This is one that we prioritized. We do expect in future years we would have to replace other playgrounds as well, but generally 25 years is about all the use we get out of a playground.
So we would replace most the stuff that's in there, or all of it, on
All of it,
playground.
yeah, and it's one of our larger playgrounds as well.
Yeah.
And as we replace playgrounds, we are trying to give a more ADA accessible surface, so that's more expensive than just the wood chips as well. So they are a high dollar item.
So can I suggest that when you come back next year for this consideration, you kind of itemize the equipment out?
Yeah, we can do that.
See, get some pictures and just kind of, I mean, I think we've all been there. I spent many splendid hours last fall playing flag football over there with grandsons, but it would be nice to just see the stuff that needs to be and staying current with it, but it might not be everything, and maybe you've already looked at that, but.
Yeah, we've gotten some quotes, and we can include that next time, get some quotes and some renderings of what we're looking at putting in there.
Maybe just send that out to the council or have Tara distribute that.
Yeah.
We can just kind of get some ideas.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
we can do that.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay, thank you.
First re-roof of the community center or the second, do you know?
This is the first re-roof, but this is just a phase of that re-roofing. It hasn't been
How
done.
old is the community center now? 20?
It's built in 2008.
17 years?
Hey, Brian, also, what is our rough estimate of our current RAP fund balance?
I think it's right around 800,000.
Say again.
800,000.
800,000. And what do we collect annually?
I think it's close to $1 million.
70,000 a month.
I think it's about 900,000 a year in collections.
So before we move too much further, Mayor, you mentioned that we'd maybe put some aside to just look at a study or to try to.
Yeah.
I mean, this building has been important to our community since the 70s when those ball fields were first put in. And I think one of the things that my experience has been up there is that if you go up there on any given night, there's hundreds of residents up there. And we've done a great job we've added some really nice things up there recently. We've got the scoreboard working, we got some netting overhead that still needs to be replaced, but we got a donation for the batting cage. But I would just like to have that conversation, because when you look at what we're talking about tonight, highest and best use, I doubt that there's any venue in our city that has more of a consistent turnout than these parents and ball players and visitors at the ballpark. So I don't know what that amount would look like or what would entail, but that would be something that we'd use in RAP for this year. Is that correct?
So what we're proposing is that we would put $50,000 towards actually designing the upgrade to that building. But if we do that, the intention would be then with the next budget that we bring forward would probably have around 500,000. We'll have a better idea of what that cost estimate would be. But we would actually go ahead and design the building, have an architect draw it, and then bring it back.
So would it be the same footprint as the current building, basically, or?
It'd be fairly similar, I don't think.
Close, right? Close quarters there?
What we'd really like to see there is especially upgrades to the bathroom.
Yeah.
That's what we'd like to see. And then concessions, potentially we could look at redoing some of the bleachers. There's some old bleachers there too. some of the newer models, the bleachers are, attached to the building, or they're just done in a different configuration. So we can look at all of that with design money.
So it's $50,000 out of this.
We would add 50,000 would be my recommendation. Just add 50,000 to the list.
Can I jump in and ask a question?
Go ahead, Councilman.
So the ball field's up there by the cemetery, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but those were always kind of considered to be areas that the cemetery would grow into, and at some point the ball fields would go away and new ball fields would be built elsewhere. If we put all the time and money into it, when would that area need to be? I guess they would basically turned over to the cemetery and not used for ball fields.
So there's some that have a lot more history than me, but that was a consideration at one point, but I don't think it's still the way that the city's thinking. We're actually working on trying to find additional cemetery space. We acquired some property near the Kirkland farm that could be used for that, and we're also working on some property in the Washington Fields area. So Barry will answer your question better, but I believe at this point we're looking to keep those ball fields where they're at and
I
not
can just
expand.
say affirmative.
Yeah, go ahead, Barry.
That's correct. That was a long time ago. That was, I would say probably the decision was changed probably at least 3 or 4 years ago, probably before Mr. Red was here, that wouldn't happen, that the ball diamonds would stay there, and that, in fact, we did some testing on the soils and stuff there. I mean, it's sitting on a rock shelf. It's not a very good place for a cemetery. The cemetery behind there, that's all field from the project done on Telegraph way back, and so that's, but that's not really a good place for a cemetery. So that's not going to happen.
Well,
I just recall the last conversations I had, it had it as being part of the cemetery growth. But if that happened after I was off, then
yeah,
I missed that conversation, so I'm fine.
That's changed. Thank you.
Good comments, Councilman Belliston. Carry on, Brian. Is there
Mayor,
further
do you
discussion
wanna-
on the
yeah,
wrap?
I want to have further conversation on the wrap, but would it be better to have him go through his presentation and then talk about
Actually, I think now's great, actually, while we're going through. Go ahead,
it?
Councilwoman.
Okay, I was just wondering, I know we've had a few conversations about the wrap tax grants, and then I don't know exactly how the number was brought forth with the 50,000, but for me, I feel like I like the idea, we've talked earlier about having the wrap tax money going towards projects that has a broader impact for our community, and then, for now and generations to come. And I also feel like when we have the money going towards city projects, there's more accountability and transparency with having the funds in the city budget, because there's a lot of people looking at it, at the city budget, and every line item, there's audits. And then there's been instances, where businesses have applied for funds, and then it was not long after the money was distributed that they, closed their doors. Or, when we've gotten receipts or pictures, it's hard to track the money that we give to, different entities. And so I would personally like to see more money going towards city projects that has a broader impact. So for me, the 50,000 seems a high number.
Councilman.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So I know that we've had discussions going forward regarding, I'll speak for myself, is that I always felt more comfortable when they would come to the city, because we have such a wealth of knowledge within our city to be able to get experts to look at things into detail. But the only one of the wrap this time that really stood out and we all kind of verbalized that we support was the Washington City Band. We could do like a budget opening for them, so they get an annual allotment or something like that, and then put this wrap tax grant money back into the general fund and have it come through the city. That would be something, I don't know if that's what you're saying, Councilwoman?
Yeah, I like this project or this process where the city's, puts the RAP tax expenses, on a place where, we can look at what the city is wanting to itemize the money for. But I do think I like having more money be spent on city projects.
So I like the option. I like to have a little bit of money set aside for these other groups, because that's kind of what it's for a little bit. And that's why I like having it. I don't limit it to one group. I think we should have a little bit of money and we disperse a little bit, and I think 50,000 out of the rest. And that number can change, but I'm comfortable with leaving the 50,000 in the grant to work with for these other groups. We don't have to approve them, and if we have left over, we can move forward based on our decision, but I like having the grant application. I don't want to get rid of it altogether, but that's kind of how I feel.
I agree with Councilman Coates.
I think you told me yesterday the annual RAP tax is about 850,000, something like that.
Yeah, just under 900 if I remember right.
So, I mean, I don't mind the 50. I mean, I completely agree with what you're saying. I really like to put the RAP tax into kind of concrete things that we can touch and feel, and that, benefit a wide group of people in our city. But I do kind of like the option of having, to me, there are some worthwhile, private entities or whatever that can benefit from, some RAP tax money. And so, I mean, that's a pretty small percentage. I don't know, 50,000, what is that? 5%.
I think Councilman Henderson, if you go back and look at the original RAP, it was written in such a way because of the desire to be able to use it with some of the community groups and some of the different things that have been going on. Art Around the Corner in St. George is one, Tuacahn is one. Certainly each city is going to have those groups that do arts and art related things within their city that we want to promote, right? So I think that's why a lot of why the law was originally written, not just for another fund for the cities.
Well, and when you look at the code, there's a lot of interpretation as far as, every city has interpreted the code very differently. And so to say, that the code was written, specifically for this, I would, it seems like everyone is interpreting different ways, but
Well, Councilman Casperson, I agree with you. I understand.
I just want to add really quick.
Let her just finish her thought first.
I know it's hard because you're on the phone and it's hard to probably hear, but there has been people in our community who have expressed, a little bit of frustration having, this money go to private entities. And then, when the county sent out, it was a pamphlet saying, that look at all the parks that we've done. So it's kind of, I don't know if it was just presented in a way that it was like funding parks and different projects like that too.
Great points. Councilman Belliston, you had some remarks?
Yeah, I apologize again, I'm trying to time my jumping in so I don't step on anybody, but I apologize. But I agree with you, Councilman Casperson. I prefer I like the ability to use it for things that the people are going to have long-term that are hard assets that can be used. But when it was pitched to the community, over a decade ago, and the way it was crafted at that point in time, that was part of the pitch. And so I just think to keep a little bit of money set aside for to include some of the community groups that do put a lot of time and effort and resources into the community, I think it's fine. If we don't use it, we don't use it, but at least have some set aside with that in mind.
Well, and I do want to say, I'm not trying to say that these these different groups don't contribute to the community. If I'm in any way
I get that.
Yeah, I'm not trying to, I do recognize the value that these groups offer to our community. I'm very supportive of the different groups who have come in, and I recognize their, how they have contributed to our community.
Well, this is good conversation. Your points are well taken. The feedback is well taken.
Mayor, one more comment.
One more comment, Councilman Ivey.
Yes, and I can, as we talked about a little bit, I realize that when people bring their applications forward, we don't have to approve them. So that money would stay in the account, and that would give us some options if there's something that we deem as valuable. But what I've heard the council be consistent on is that we want to make sure that the city is taken care of, you know, with what we feel is our priorities for the most good. But our partners are important too. So leaving that money there, I'm okay with, because I do realize that we have the say whether to distribute that or not. And if we don't distribute it, it stays in the fund for other considerations.
So was it you, Councilman, that talked about some of these, we have kind of done recurring investment because of the value they bring to the community? I think of the Washington City Concert Band, for example. Are you saying on some of those, we just budget rather than make them go through a grant process? Or are you saying to, you know, maybe limit or eliminate the grant process?
Yeah, like I feel if, you know, like it sounds like there is, you know, the Washington City Band, if they want to, you know, because I don't think they have applied for money every year when I've looked back on it. But if they want to, you know, ask for such minimal, you know, if they want to ask for some funding, I don't want to like get rid of it altogether, you know, but I just feel like that.
No, I hear you, and I think this is a good conversation. I don't know that we're gonna solve it right now, but I think this is good conversation, and certainly the way the city is approaching RAP funds is changing and evolving, and I think tonight was a good example of reviewing the applications and taking all things, you know, into consideration. Councilman Coates, you have a comment?
Just a question for Manager Red. So with these, we're looking at our tentative budget for these things. We still need to approve these things through the council, correct?
That's correct. This is just our first.
Approval at the approval of the,
When you approve the budget, then these would be included in that.
and we need to have more detail at the budget time to approve these to make sure we understand what we're doing just on these items, because it is a RAP tax. Usually, like if it's a park playground, we should have, hey, this is the playground equipment we're replacing, or something of that nature.
So I think what we'll do is we're at a tentative budget now.
Yeah, I'm just saying, when we get closer, we gotta have, before we approve the budget,
So
we
I
need
think
to have more
the
details on
timeline we're
that.
looking at is ideally being ahead would be a May 14 public hearing and a May 28 approval. But I think what the council is asking, and I think staff is willing to do that, is just to get us some details on these particular items, just so we kind of, and I think you were already kind of planning on that with the Heritage Playground replacement. But on some of those other things, maybe just a little bit of detail on that, because once this budget's approved, then these are projects that will go forward. Other than obviously, if the RAP tax grant stays in, then that would be, you know, up to the council discretion if or how much that would pay out. Which to me, given kind of the sentiment of the council, I think that's a good compromise right now. It allows for some in cases, but it doesn't, just because 50,000 is on a line item doesn't mean the entire amount has to be expended, like Councilman Ivey said. So I think just kind of taking the feedback that I'm hearing, that's probably a good compromise. The other question we have is council, is there an appetite to start doing some design for a new bathroom and, you know, concession stand at the ball fields? Is there an appetite for that funding?
I'd like to do that. I mean, that building's 40 years old. It's like a tough shed that has deteriorated really bad. So I'd like to, we can do better than that up there. That's a great ball field.
Wasn't it kind of hazardous?
I think somebody put their leg through the secondary floor.
Let's not call it hazardous.
There's probably fluoride in the water. Wait, the water doesn't work up there.
That's why we have it closed. We don't allow the use of the bathroom or the upstairs.
Retract that from the minutes, please.
So, unless there's any objection, council.
I don't have an objection. I think I'm always for design. I think designs are good to have, and if we have the budget next year, which I think we will, and if it's a priority, we'll prioritize it. I'm always for design ahead.
Councilman Belson, your thoughts on adding 50,000 onto this for a redesign for the concessions.
As long as it's not ever going to be contemplated for cemetery expansion, I'm fine with it.
Okay, so I think that's some feedback that you've got, is to add the 50 into there. Carry on, Brian.
I'll add that in. Thank you. So another major component of the budget is impact fees, and that's all driven by new residential growth. So on here, I estimated 564, but I just took the average, and March came in and it's quite a bit higher than my average. So that number says 564, but I would shoot maybe towards more 600 for this year's, and then next year's we're estimated at 730 building permits for new residential. So there you can kind of see how the permits fall out throughout the years. And as I mentioned, the health insurance, it actually was a 2.5% increase, but every year, so that equates to about $100,000 increase into health insurance. But every year, so we belong to PHP, but they give us a rebate check depending on how things go. And this year we received a $35,000 rebate check. So if you apply that to this 100,000, it comes out to overall 1.6% increase for the health insurance premiums this year.
So Brian, we got a reduction last year, and then they're increasing us this year?
It's all driven off utilization. So yeah, last year I think it was a 1% decrease, and this year is 2.5. And the average for the PHP members was 5%. So we're a little lower, but usually healthcare is all driven off of utilization. They look at.
And was the odd year. I don't know that we've ever had a reduction, but we've had zeros. This is a pretty increase.
Thad, did you have something to add?
Yeah, just this is a little different than just, a market-based insurance coverage. The city's considered a member. It's almost like a mutual insurance company or a trust where the city's considered kind of an interest holder in the overall ownership of it all. And so the yearly increases or decreases are offered because of that interest. If we were just a market customer, there wouldn't be anything like that. And then they're calculated, like Jeremy said, and Brian said, based on whether our pool of insured folks, had a good year with claims or a big year with claims. It just all relates to how the year went. And so looking at it on an after site, and so it's difficult to change that number, but I do know that HR monitors this, city management monitor it, and there's times when there's trainings and efforts to try and improve, our performance as far as claims goes.
Yeah, and I used to work in the healthcare industry, and I rarely saw decreases in premiums. The only time I really saw them is when people jumped to HSA. Like we had traditionally, we jumped in HSA, and then the next year was 5%, then it went to -3 because there's less utilization with HSAs. Just to go back to the slide, because I forgot to point out one thing. Right here on the general fund, in this budget, I calculated the fund balance. So with this revenue expense, the fund balance would be at about 19%. So the next steps are, if we move forward, will be to have the public hearing on the 14th and then adopt the budget on the 28th. If you have any questions, you can contact Jeremy.
And that's the 28th of May, so that still puts us a little bit ahead, but, Brian's done a ton of work to get this all ready. We're actually a little bit ahead of where we have been in past years, but it's nice, so we're not feeling rushed as we get to the end of the year. So.
I was at a UGFOA conference last week, and they're all jealous because we had our tentative budget ready. Some of them, I think, are just starting. So
it's not how we roll, Brian, is it?
I was extremely happy about it, where we're at.
Council, your feedback for Brian on this budget, he and Jeremy and all of our departments have worked so hard to put together.
So it's more of a comment. I appreciate all your work, Brian. I've been on council 5 years. I've looked at a bunch of different budgets now, and the first one was $80 million, and now we're up to 139. But the thing I look at is from year to year, we grew so fast, so quick, those first couple of years, it jumped. And now we're seeing more of a attainable growth. It's $2 million on our 139 million is way more attainable than the 20 million we got in a couple of our budgets. So I appreciate the hard work, and I appreciate our staff trying to keep costs down and doing what they can with what they have. So I think I just want to send my appreciation out to the staff in that, because I do look at that overall budget and how we are keeping it attainable, and it seems within reason with what we've done the last few years and been doing good. So thank you.
Good comments. Further comment along that?
I'll just echo that. Great job to everyone, Jeremy and Brian and the whole staff.
Thank you, Councilman. Any further comment?
Mayor, I'd just say that if you run the percentages on our growth and what our budget has increased, I think that it's been very well administered, and we have a one thing that we all agree on as council is that we administer the citizens' money very well. And I see that again this year.
Councilman Casperson?
I just want to thank Brian for keeping Jeremy in line.
Yeah. Councilman Belliston, thoughts?
Oh, I'm good. I do have some questions for Jeremy when I get back in town, but I'll just do those offline. No need to have them in a public meeting.
Sounds good. All right, council, so I'm going to turn to you. I've added, done a little math here with that 50,000 for RAP. So for the design of the what do we call it, the concession stand, for lack of a better term. So I'd like you to consider making a motion to approve the tentative 2025-2026 budget at $139,309,389 and setting the public hearing date for May 14th, 2025.
So moved, Mayor.
I have a motion by Councilman Coates.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Second by Councilman Ivy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is approved unanimously, 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move along to section 8 of the agenda, agreement, after which we'll go back to item 6B. So we'll have 8A, then 6B. 8A, this is continuation of consideration of a modified site plan and site plan agreement addendum for Stuckey Farms PCD. City Attorney Thad Segmiller will take us through the agreement. Mr. Segmiller.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm just waiting for my screen mirroring to catch up. There we go. I'm going to start with, this was actually just a sign of me being a little bit of a nerd. And I had prepared this before the last hearing on this, but you look at the site plans a lot and you see the colors and the lines and the shapes. And there's one time when I felt like I wanted to understand it a little better. So I just took all the categories from both of those site plans and put them in a spreadsheet so you could compare them. And I just wanted to share it with you before we jump into the amendments that were made to the site plan agreement. I'm going to start you at the bottom line, and all of these numbers are in acres. These are talking about acres. So you'll see in the 2019 site plan, it was looking at a acreage total of around 612.3 acres. The one that's proposed before you at this time is less, mostly because the prior developer utilized some of those acres and we're not planning those in the site plan now. So you're looking at a site plan with about 70 less acres. In the 2019 site plan, there was 201.2 total acres of open space, and this one's looking at 136. So about 64 acres less of open space in this one than the prior one. I've got some open space categories. These are all, when you add all these up, you get to that 201 number. So the original one in 19 had 25 acres of surface water. As you know, we've pursued the interest of trying to reduce that. And so we're 6.3 acres less in surface water on this one. A lot of the open space in the original one was supposed to be common open space, 130 acres of that. And the current proposal reduces that down to 84, so 45 less acres there. You'll see a small reduction in the fire station, church, farmhouse parcels. I think those are just the matter of boundary lines, John, not a lot of commentary there. You'll see the parks has been slightly reduced. We're going from 16.3 parks to 11.5, and then ball fields from 16.3 to 10. Then we get into the commercial hospitality. You'll see in the original one, there was no acres proposed with that designation, and there's 4.1 proposed in this one. The general commercial in the original one was 110. There just wasn't a lot of definition there. They identified 110, but hadn't defined them. This one has 23 general commercial. So you see a reduction of 87, but the very next line, you'll notice mixed use is a new category, which is commercial and residential mixed, and you'll see that that number correlates really closely. The data that I found most interesting, because it just kind of correlates to the market, you'll see the very low density and the low density areas were reduced by 9 and 16.1 acres. The medium density was increased to 36, and I think those numbers just reflect the trend that the market's been showing in our area lately. We're not necessarily trying to make everything super, super high density, but the concept of big estate lots is just kind of going out of vogue, and so these numbers show that. And then you'll see the medium high density here shows a decrease. All in all, I found the numbers to just be helpful to kind of look at two different eras of site plans and recognize that there's a lot that's the same. It's just there's differences in the market today, and things have been moved around in different ways here and there. Any questions on that, or can I move to the document?
Hey, that's very helpful, Thad. Thank you. It's nice to see it tallied that way.
Yeah, if you've got a numbers mind, or if you just, sometimes the colors just start to run into each other, this breaks it up into numbers and not colors. I'm now just going to go straight to the document and show you the red lines that were made in response to the dialogue and feedback from the prior meeting. I think that might be the most useful, and thankfully the comments were targeted and the red lines aren't excessive, so we can get right through them. I'm just gonna. So you'll see there, recitals letter D previously addressed the PIDs. We deleted that because one of the efforts in these changes was to remove all references to PIDs in this document. In paragraph number 2, we went in there to make sure that we designated a numerical acreage figure for each of the categories. So you'll see the blue text saying 6.7 acres of stormwater and 12 acres of recreational lagoons, so that the document was precise on those numbers.
And the 6.7 is the existing, is that right? Stormwater lagoons, that's the existing.
Correct. 6.7 is for the lagoon that I believe it exists, but has the purpose of, storing stormwater, and then also having just a static pool of a lake or a pond. Okay. And so when it's in static, it may not be 6.7 acres of water, but when it fills to full pool to handle stormwater, it might have that size.
Can I ask a quick question?
Go ahead, Councilman.
So is that 6.7 acreage measurement, is that based on full pool? Or is that based on what they plan on filling it to, or whatever?
So I believe it measures the size of the basin that the city's stormwater policies required, and that within that basin, there's a smaller size of what we would call the static pool, or the water that's there every day without storms. But the basin was required to be designed to hold the capacity of the predicted storms based on our policies. And so 6.7, I believe, reflects the max capacity of that facility, not the static pool.
All right, if we can confirm that, that'd be great.
Okay.
I'm getting Brandy's nod of confirmation.
Thanks.
Subsection C in the same section, we had some good discussion on that. We've made some additions to indicate that the language in there would apply to reverse osmosis or any other water treatment technology that might come around whenever this becomes a relevant paragraph to interpret. And then you'll see some additional language there at the bottom that's just there to add definition as well as also clarity as we try to understand how to interpret this when the time comes that it needs to be interpreted. Subsection D, there was some edits here. Mostly those changes reflect edits I needed to make after removing the PID language that was in there. And so it's not so much a substance or an issue there that was requested as it is I just had to rework some sentences after deleting the PID language. Subsection F is where I moved some language that was probably, I won't say probably, it was previously added into that above paragraph, and I went ahead and made it its own subsection. And this is the clarity that the hospitality village would not have a culinary water restriction like the lakes and lagoons would. And so this is language we previously had. I just moved it out of the above paragraph and then restyled it a little bit to meet the interest the council had expressed. Section 3 here, the dedication of the park. These weren't discussed by the council, but as I reviewed it, I felt like it was necessary to add. On the 3 options of park dedication, I realized I hadn't had any language about which one would govern, and so I wrote in there that it would be the earliest of those 3, and so they would need to dedicate that park at whichever of those occurred soonest. And then in the lower sections, I felt like we needed to add that the boundary would be adjacent to the BF parcel to trigger that possible subsection. Some other changes in here as I removed the PID language from this section. I just restyled some of the language so that it worked better. In subsection 4B, this is another area where we deleted some references to the PID, and so restyling of the language there, nothing new as far as content. In section 5, there was a request from the council that we make some changes, and so we did a little bit of work here to make sure that we just had defined more clearly the usages in that hospitality village and what would be counted as towards density or what wouldn't, and you'll see language here later on. We added above here, in both of these sections, I added an additional language that says that those villages must comply with the city's code about regulation of short-term rentals. And so that's what that section is you see there, and that's what the next one is that you see. And then you'll see here in this last paragraph, my best attempt to define how we would count units in the hospitality village that weren't operated or managed by a hotel. And so I'll just read it so the council can hear it there. Nevertheless, density at the hospitality village, I'll pause. The black text right before it is talking about the overall density that was requested of 2,334. So this is the section that's talking density. That number reflects an increase in a density increase request from the applicant. The red language now, nevertheless, density at the hospitality village shall be limited to not more than 40 units per acre, with the maximum density within the hospitality village capped at 460 units. For purposes of clarity, any residential units that are not part of nightly rental hotels, condotels, townhomes, twin homes, cottages, single-family homes, and various other residential housing types specifically, and the word owned is going to be removed out of that, or has been in the signature copy, specifically operated and managed by a hotel or similar on-site commercial hospitality enterprise shall not be deemed commercial and shall be included within the 2,334 calculation. And so we kind of got into a busy list of types and categories, but that last phrase, managed, operated or managed by a hotel or similar on-site commercial hospitality enterprise, that's the definition. So if it is, the staff will not count it towards the density for residential units. If it isn't, which means it could be occupied by, you know, Uncle Thad for a 24-month period, or anybody else, right? It could be occupied like a single-family residence, then it would be counted towards the density allocation number.
Dad, can I ask you a question on that?
Certainly.
You're saying 40 units per acre, not including the hotel?
No, there's two types of density expressions in here. The 40 per units per acre is not counting the total units. It's just saying that never would it be more dense than that. And so we count density in two ways.
But that's for including the hotel and the total of the hospitality area.
That's for this village. That's for the entirety of this 4.1 acre village.
$4.1. So that 4.1 times 40 is way more than that.
It's way more than what?
Way more than, or way less than 460. 4 times 40 is 160.
And what's your question, Councilman?
What? No, you said for the 4-acre hospitality village, right? Is capped at 40 per acre or 460 units. That puts us up at what? 12 acres, not 4 acres.
I'm gonna let Brandy come do the math since she's the engineer.
Brandy Walker with Civil Science. It's the initial map or breakdown you put up. You listed the hospitality at 4.1. Councilman Bellison is hanging his hat on that. It's 46.1. So there was a typo in that chart.
Oh, yeah, on this paper. Okay.
So that's my math error. So 46
That makes
times
sense.
46 times 40, whatever that. Yeah.
So 46 times 40, that's what, 1,600 units?
It's 10 units an acre, right? So it's 40 acres times 10, which is 401.
Yeah, I'm not, I think I'm straight on the math. I'm not sure what the question from the councilman is where I'm not certain what's being asked.
Well, you're calling the density at not more than 40 units per acre with a maximum density of 460, so that's 10 per acre. I'm just trying to, just in my head, align the size of the area along with the different densities.
Yes.
It's 40 units per acre is a pretty dense project.
So I think what I would just ask you to do is acknowledge that 40 units per acre is just saying that any 1 acre could not have more than 40 in an acre. So that's the type of metric that is. And then
that works.
We do the other metric, which is usually just saying, but not to exceed within the whole region, the total number. And so you've got two different metrics of density measurement. Staff would interpret and apply both of those. And so if in a certain acre in this village, they were proposing 80 units, they would be in excess of the 40 per units metric. But if they were under 40 units per acre in all of the acres in this village, the staff would also then look and see what their density actually equated to and if it exceeded the max total. And so they may need, after review from staff, to reduce if they in total had more units than the maximum limit. And so
I think he's got it. If you look at that Exhibit C and you look at Area 28, it's got that 46.1.
Yeah.
So that math works well with both of those.
They're two different statements on density management. They're not really numerically related unless and until you've got a site plan that's proposing units and then staff interprets both of those against the proposal on review.
Carry on, Thad.
And I believe that is, other than, I added a title to this section 12A because I didn't have one. Somehow I'd missed that previously, but those are all the the changes that were made pursuant to the request from council. What questions might you have for me?
Questions for city attorney?
I don't have any for that, but I have some for the council when we're ready.
And I was just going to advise you, Mayor and council, that the applicants are here with their representatives. If you have any questions for them, I think they've come prepared to correspond with you also.
Sounds good. We'll turn to the council for discussion amongst the council, and if any of you would like to hear from the applicant or the applicant's representative, I'm happy to invite them forward. Councilman Coates.
Yeah, so I think I look at this agreement and it's not a perfect agreement for any side. I think I'm trying to find a pathway forward. Thing that I'm currently struggling on is the original agreement had 1,884 units. They want to go to 2,2334, which is a 20% increase, plus the 400 up to 460, which makes it a 32% increase. So I'm not saying maybe it's not the right. Those are some of my concerns on that. As far as the water, like I said, they're using their own water. They don't use culinary. I think it's reduced. I think we're working through these things. It's not perfect. I don't love it all, but I don't hate it all either. So, but that's where I'm at with the density. Those are big increases, and in my opinion, not a ton for the city. Where we're reducing park for them to build, but we have to build it, which is probably better in the long run with the problems we've had with private parks. Community can use it, those type of things. So I'm actually going to recommend we allow up to a 10% increase, which is 2,072 units, with the caveat that they can come back and ask in the future if they need to. But let's see how it goes for the first few years.
Further discussion, Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councilman Coates. It's not a perfect agreement, but I think I'm satisfied with it. All of my concerns, for the most part, have been addressed. I appreciate the city staff and the developers for, going through the process, and I think it's good. I'm pretty satisfied with it. It's not perfect, but I like it. Thad, thank you for, these numbers, this chart with the numbers were helpful. I think, I appreciate what Councilman Coates says and his concerns. I think the increased density is kind of reflected in these numbers here, and I think that's kind of the direction that all developments are going, at this point. A little bit more density, lots a little bit smaller, so that the homes can be as affordable as, we can make them, which is not very affordable. Anyway, I'm happy with the agreement. I'm satisfied with it, and I'll be voting yes for it, so.
Councilman, I just wanted to add to what you're saying, because this is kind of where we're at in today's world. Back when this was originally drawn, those numbers were probably good, but I was pleased to see that majority of these units are on smaller lots, which we are in hopes and encourage in every way that they do meet affordable, because that's kind of where we're at in the world right now. Things are expensive, and we have to provide housing for all segments of our society. I'm pleased with the agreement. I think that it's been a back and forth. I realize that it's been uncomfortable at times, but what's important to remember is that with 5 council members, it's important that we take the time and let everyone voice their concerns and have answers given. I think we're in a better place now than what we would have been previous. And so I appreciate each one of the council members that I serve with, the mayor, staff. Thad, your presentation, just like you always do, just pinpoints the issues and makes it clear to understand. So for me, where I do totally understand, I think that this is kind of indicative of what developers are doing in today's world. And again, we want that to equate to home ownership and availability, affordability.
Councilman Casperson, thoughts?
Yeah, I guess I'll just add my appreciation to Thad for his work on this. I like how he was very clear about not using culinary water for this. And then I also, for any of their lagoons. And then I also like how he has the that the developer is not allowed to discharge into the city sanitary sewer system, any of the byproducts from the water treatment system. And then, I feel like a lot of the things that I've asked have been, was change, there was changes made. And so I am ready to move forward with this as well.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Belliston, final thoughts before I call for a motion?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of positives in this for the developer. I mean, they're not having the obligation to build some parks. They're able to develop some open space. They're increasing hundreds of residential units. They're adding even more hundreds of vacation rental density. They're adding commercial, and then we're picking up the park obligation. And the one thing that I've had a real problem with has been a non-starter for them, right? I think, they've had a lot of, I just haven't felt met in the middle. But that being said, Mayor, I'm ready to make a motion to approve the site plan agreement, subject to a couple of minor modifications to the agreement.
I'm happy for whomever would like to make a motion to make a motion.
I'm ready to make a motion.
I just made the motion.
Would Councilman restate your motion? I thought you said you're happy to make a motion.
Oh, yeah, I'd make a motion that we approve the site plan agreement, subject to a couple minor modifications to this agreement. One is that the water shares and water rights are deed restricted for a future donation to the city's secondary water system when the time comes. Because I think the fact that they've got water rights in there contemplating a donation, I think those ought to be deed restricted. The second modification I would suggest is that the density as it relates to this agreement is a framework, and that no density is actually entitled by this agreement. The density will not be entitled until the differing development pod approvals are granted as they bring those forward. And the third would be that there's a cleanup to the density language in the hospitality area, because to me, it's a little bit confusing.
You've heard the motion. Thad?
Just ask for clarity on number one. The first proposed modification, Councilman, I'm not familiar with a legal manner of deed restricting water shares in a canal company. Are you just are you asking that they be pledged or restricted from transfer? What is it that you're asking for?
Correct. Same thing, restricted from transfer or pledged or held until such a point in time that they be granted to the city for inclusion in the secondary water system. It seems silly to me to have an agreement or agree to water rights to go in a secondary water system that then aren't somehow tied up for that purpose.
Well, the purpose of this contract in that language is to tie it up for that purpose. If they were to, let's say, convey those and be unable to perform a contract term, then they would be in breach of the contract. And so I'm just trying to clarify what it is you're asking in that condition, so that if it's passed, I know how to make it come into fruition.
So Thad, can I ask, would that be that, based on the way it's currently written, doesn't give us the first right of refusal, right?
It does not give us a first right of refusal. What I understand is those shares have been pledged to lenders, and so there's already a bank with more money than us that's in a position before us, and so we would be taking a second or subsequent position against them if that's what we did.
You've heard the motion.
And what good are they?
Question, Councilman?
No, it just says that the developer will convey to the city 31 shares in the St. George and Washington Canal Company in exchange for agreed details of secondary water service for the city. If they've transferred them or placed them somebody else or used them elsewhere, then they're not available. And I don't think it's just the 31 shares in the canal company. I firmly believe that at some point, even that brackish water is going to become valuable enough that we find a way to treat it. I mean, they're treating seawater for drinking. We could do the same with the brackish water down there.
Mayor.
I wouldn't suggest we
Councilman
limit
Ivey.
it to the canal shares.
So Mayor, is that right? A motion's been made?
A motion is on the table.
So I would make a motion to substitute motion to approve in consideration of a modified site plan and site plan agreement addendum for Stuckey Farms as presented.
I have a substitute motion on the table.
I need more clarification on the ones, Councilman Belliston. On the second one, I didn't understand the second one either. Can you restate that one, Councilman Belliston?
Well, this agreement essentially
motion and you have a-
entitles,
You have a motion and you have a substitute motion. So the substitute motion needs to be voted on before you go back to the regular motion.
So
If it gets a second.
we have a motion with conditions that did not get seconded. I have a substitute motion to approve as presented. I will give it a few seconds for a second on the substitute motion, otherwise we'll start this conversation over. Do I have a second on the substitute motion?
Second.
I have a motion to approve as presented by Councilman Ivey. I have a second by Councilman Henderson. We'll go roll call vote, starting with Councilmember Henderson. Coates.
Nay.
Ivey. Casperson.
Aye.
Belliston.
I don't know how you insert a substitute motion when there wasn't time to, where we're still having a conversation on the first one, but nay.
We have split approval. The agreement is approved 3-2 as per the roll call vote. We'll move on to item 6B. This is consideration to approve an ordinance for zone change Z-25-09 to amend medium-density residential PCD setbacks for Stuckey Farms. The applicant is Civil Science. Community Development Assistant Director Eldon Gibb will present to the council on this item.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Appreciate Thad's last work there. He identified that the medium density was going to be increased by 36 plus or minus acres, and that's exactly what this zone change is requesting, to change the setbacks in that medium density area to a 5-foot side yard setback and a 10-foot garage setback, maintaining a 20-foot driveway. The Planning Commission reviewed this request on April 2nd, 2025, and recommended approval. The 3-1 vote of Z-25-09 for zone change request, amending the zoning comparison chart onto City Council here, and that was based on the findings and conditions stated in the report. I'm happy to answer any clarifying questions you may have at this time.
All right, council, questions for the Assistant Director in regards to this ordinance asking for reduced setbacks? Are there any questions for staff? Any questions for the applicant? If not, I'm happy to entertain further discussion or a motion.
Make a motion, I'll make a motion to approve an ordinance for a zone change Z-25-09 to amend medium density residential PCD setbacks for Stuckey Farms.
I have a motion by Councilwoman Casperson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Coates. It's an ordinance. We'll go roll call, starting with Councilmember Coates.
Aye.
Ivey. Casperson.
Aye.
Belliston.
Nay.
Henderson.
Aye.
That is approved 4-1. We'll move along with item 9. We're once again sequential. Report of officers from assigned committees. Councilman Belliston, anything to report?
Not at this time, thanks.
Councilman Henderson.
Mayor, I don't have anything tonight. Thank you.
Councilman Coates.
Yes, Mayor, I have a couple things to go over. Mostly, we did a bunch of interviews for the solid waste There was 30-something applicants. For the manager job out there, we got it down to 5 people. We interviewed some, but I can't tell you the name because we have any, but we picked one, they accepted, and we'll let you know next time. But I can probably tell you in closed session if you keep your mouth shut about it. But we did pick one that I'm happy with. It's always fun, you know, especially when you have a big board.
Councilman, that sounds like a lot of applicants. Did the district feel like they were 30, you know, like that?
I don't know how, I mean, I don't interview a lot of people when it comes to a district manager job. I've only done it a couple times. I've done it 4 times now. So. But I can say that you get 30 and 5 were worth interviewing, maybe. And we had some really good couple top 3. And we interviewed those, you know, I mean, we actually interviewed only 4 because the 5th couldn't make the time. So we interviewed 4, narrowed it down to the top 2, and I think we've got the best for the future moving forward. So I'm super excited for the district. As you all know, you walk through the buildings. We're hopeful. They got into the admin building yesterday, so we're into the admin building now. I'm pushing them as hard as I can, but they are super nervous. They won't let me do it on a Monday because it's a busy day, and they won't let me do it on a Saturday because it's a busy day. So I'm stuck to midweek to opening it, but I'm pressing the staff pretty hard to get it open. They're doing the best they can, but you know, it's always that scary of opening a new scale house and then having a huge line. So.
Well, Mr. Chair, I know you're looking forward to getting your life back.
I am really looking forward to getting my life back. It's been a heck of a couple months figuring it out, and it has taken me away from some of my other duties, but I appreciate you guys working with me to try to get that up and running.
You know, I don't think it hurt to have moved forward with those improvements to the facilities. And I think that might even be reflected in those number of applicants and quality applicants that you got. I mean, you classed the place up.
Yeah, it's a nice facility. It's really nice. So
it's the classiest landfill around.
It'll probably get beat up pretty hard as soon as you start working it, right? But we're trying to keep it nice, but also keep the cost down. There's one thing I want. We are the cheapest landfill in the state of Utah. So we try to keep our fees down as much as we can. That board's really, really good at, they're really good at not letting us spend money, which is good. They allowed us to get the loan, which was nice, and we have a nice facility. We have room for growth. We have, it's hopefully going to be a nicer system, you know, and maybe just because the residents are here, everyone is allowed up to a ton a month, so 1,000 pounds a month that they can dump for free. You just got to drive up. You know, we're changing some policies where it's going to be tied to your driver's license, and some new software allows us to do that. But that's something a lot of people don't know, and then you show up. But I do know that can't give you the exact date, but look at the county website of when there's like the hard disposal days, like oils and stuff like that, you can dispose for the hard chemicals. So that's coming
Now,
up.
in honor of former Councilman Mike Heaton, I'm going to ask you this one question. How's the trash?
It's piling up.
It's piling up.
It's piling up. There you go. It took me a minute. So it is piling up faster than I think we all want. But, you know, one of the other things that I think you're aware of, we budgeted for community cleanup to try to hit some of these main roads. I've mentioned it before. We budgeted $50,000. It's a lot of money, but we have the sheriffs, that goes to a lot of the sheriffs to attack some of these hard hit areas, which we're a hard hit area because we're in it. Plus we have staff that is, I mean, we just hired a part-time employee to help us with some of that trash pickup and some of those needs along Landfill Road, and try to keep that kind of under as best as we can, you know.
That's been a huge benefit too. I really appreciate the whole landfill group, the solid waste group, because that's been big. We've seen a vast improvement since that started, so that's really helpful for our city.
So we're doing our best. But I do have one announcement that I told you I'd get from last time. So we are probably going to do a ribbon cutting on June 6th at 9 a.m. It's a Friday. I know it's a little end of the year hot, but the staff didn't want to open it too soon, do a ribbon cutting and then expect people to go across the scale house. So we're going to get a little soft opening, get it working. Hopefully the goal is maybe end of April, trying to ease into it so we don't get overwhelmed. But as soon as we can, we will. But
Terry, you'll get that on the calendars for us? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Thanks, Councilman. Councilman Ivey.
Mayor, I don't have anything tonight.
Councilwoman Casperson.
Well, I already had Sherry do an amazing job at letting us know what the events are going to be for Cotton Days. So I just am good about, choosing the right people to do my presentations. I had Paul last week and then, or whatever.
It's like you can come hang out with me and get this landfill up and running instead of doing, if you got Sherry taking care of that one.
Well, she's awesome, yes.
Councilman Coates, can I just share a little on the landfill? As you were talking, I remembered one of the first service projects I was ever involved in as a little Cub Scout was we went and cleaned up plastic bags along the landfill road because back then the trash or the waste control was just not anywhere near the standard what it is today. And I remember all day long on a Saturday, we just pulled bags and trash out of bushes, and we don't resemble anything like that anymore. But I'm at that age where nothing makes a weekend quite like just taking a load of trash to the truck, right? Like that just makes me feel as good as anything.
Under 2,000 pounds.
What I love also is the staff at the scales are always so kind and friendly to me. Like I recognize that's there's some rough elements to working at that facility, but I always am greeted by happy people. So good job on.
I'd have to leave it to the staff. They're the ones that do it. One motto that I've heard a lot from kind of the upper end staff is no one's too big at the landfill to pick up trash. So from the district manager down to the part-time employees, everybody's needs to pick up trash no matter what. So it's crazy. I see people all the time that technically in their job role isn't their job, but I mean, that's our job. The job down there is to pick up trash. So I'm appreciative of the staff, and it is true. It is therapeutic to go take a load there.
And to your point, Thad, about, Saturdays and fulfillment by, taking a load out to the dump, I think that really resonates with our city manager. I mean, I think what he really likes to do is load his golf clubs in the back of his Tesla and veer from the landfill over to Green Spring and get 18 holes in. But, to each their own on a Saturday. I have nothing. City manager report.
Mayor, other than wishing you a happy birthday, I don't have anything to report today.
Yeah, it's nifty to be 50. Okay. Closed session. We'll need a motion to go to closed session to discuss character or professional competence of an individual. Call for motion to that effect. Motion
Second.
by Councilman Ivey, second by Councilman Coates. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All in favor? That's unanimous.